I have created scientific magic. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201. The controller of Harbor Town and Aida's magic star. The sudden storm did not cause too many obstacles. After 3 days of sailing, everyone arrived at the Yaita harbor very smoothly. At this moment, the landing point of the airship was surrounded by people in the center of the city, densely crowded in the streets. Under the uninterrupted publicity of Magic Daily, Lin En's various deeds in Greenrail had long been spread throughout the port city, and the efficiency brought was undoubtedly shocking. A month ago, after the news of Helram's death came, many wizards of the Yaita school suddenly felt that the sky had fallen. A great wizard is undoubtedly the backbone of the prosperity of the school, and the fall of the other party often represents the loneliness of a school. This kind of thing has happened more than once in the wizard land. Coupled with the impact of the tragedy in the South City district, some people even think that the Yaita school is finished, and the parliament will definitely send another great wizard to take over this important port city, so that many wizards began to consider whether to change their homes and seek a better way out. However, what they didn't expect was that this magic seminar, which they were very pessimistic about, actually had a turnaround. Lin En, who came from the Sea of Mist, expounded his planetary theory at the seminar and proposed the law of universal gravitation. He was not only appreciated by the legendary wizard Lord Hariv, but also nominated for the Corona Medal, making the Aida school famous. When they received this news, everyone's first reaction was to doubt whether this was a scam. The Corona Medal is the highest honor award in the entire magic world. How could it be awarded to a three-ring wizard? It was not until more and more news came back through Magic Weekly, including the pendulum experiment that Lin En did at the venue and the method of measuring the circumference of the planet, that everyone suddenly realized that this was all true. Is that the Corona Medal? This is an honor that even Master Helram couldn't get. A witch stared at Lin En, who had just come down from the airship, and at first glance she noticed the dark golden medal on his chest, which was emitting a dazzling magical glow. The wizards of the Yaita school were also staring at the medal. They were extremely envious and proud of it. After all, it was also the honor of the entire school. When Lin En had just joined the Yaita school and became a professor, many people complained that Master Helram would easily let a person who had no idea about the details join the school and gave such a high salary, which would cause problems sooner or later. But now it seems that this is simply the most correct thing Master Helram has ever done. Do you think that Mr. Lin En has already broken through to become a great wizard? Someone in the crowd suddenly asked curiously. Yesterday's Magic Weekly mentioned that because an organization called the Doomsday Cult was infiltrated by the staff of the church, it caused a lot of turmoil in Greenrail City, and Lin En made an extremely outstanding contribution in this incident, almost delaying the legendary wizard's return by himself. This doesn't look like something the three-ring wizard can do. It shouldn't be possible. I heard from Professor Orlando that Mr. Lin En may not be 20 years old this year. The wizard in black robe said in disbelief. A great wizard under 20 years old. This is too shocking. But thinking that the other party has obtained the highest honor in the magic world that even great wizards cannot obtain, it seems to become sparse and normal. At the same time, as Lin En and others entered the square inches the center of the city, the crowd gathered here became more and more excited, shouting loudly, "Magic Star of Yaita!" The shouting became louder and louder, and kept echoing over the entire city. Lin En didn't know whether he should be happy or depressed for a while, although this meant that he had won the recognition of the vast majority of people. The last person who was called the Magic Star was still locked up in the Magic Core. Taking advantage of such an enthusiastic scene, Philip, Kevin and others discussed with the official wizards of the Yaita school and soon announced in public that Lin En would take over the position of Dean of the Yaita school in the future. Amidst the praise and cheers, Lin En officially took over the entire magic school and gained actual control of this port city. In the evening, after the celebration banquet, Lin En climbed to the top of the college tower for the first time and entered the dean's office. Everything here was more plain than he had imagined. There were only some simple decorations. There were some dusty parchment rolls scattered on the table, and a magic clock used to display the time. It was hard to tell that this was where a great wizard usually stayed. It was a bit too shabby. Lin En couldn't help but shake his head. If we don't consider the troubles he had caused in order to resurrect his daughter, Harum, the founder and controller of the Yayata school, could be called enlightened. Elemental wind. Lin En raised his hand, and a gust of wind suddenly rolled up in the immersed principal's office, sweeping away the accumulated dust. Outside the door, a knock on the door had already sounded. "Come in," Lin En said. The tightly closed door was pushed open, and it was Orlando who walked in, followed by two fairies holding thick pages of materials, flapping their wings with great effort to keep up with the former. "Professor Lin En," Orlando habitually called out, and then corrected in annoyance. "No, I should call you Dean now." "No need to be so polite." Lin En smiled and then asked again, "Have you sorted out all the materials I asked you to organize?" "It's all here." Orlando handed the few pages of parchment in his hand to Lin En, and the two fairies behind him also hurriedly waved their wings to put down the heavy materials, panting tiredly on the side. Lin En reached out to take the parchment and read it. It was a series of personnel lists, to be exact. All the wizards and apprentices trained by the entire Yayata school in more than 20 years, excluding those wizards who died of illness, were killed in battles, or left the school. There are currently about 1,100 wizard apprentices and 260 former wizards left in the port city. This is less than he expected. After Orlando's explanation, Lin En realized that this was related to the tragedy in the South City a month ago. The entire Yayata suffered heavy losses. A total of 141 wizard apprentices and 15 former wizards died in the catastrophe, and the number of poor people who died was more than 1,700. Chapter 202. Wizards who don't pay taxes and civilians who can't make any money. Hearing these numbers, Lin En felt overwhelmed. He personally participated in the entire incident and guessed that there would be many deaths, but he didn't expect so many. In addition, during the follow-up investigation, the security team also discovered something strange. On the day of the catastrophe, 9 wizards in Harbor Town were inexplicably mentally damaged. 5 of them have been confirmed dead, and the remaining 4 have severe brain damage, which is no different from death. Orlando continued to report. After searching the mansions of these wizards, the security team found some books on psychic magic, and this thing. Orlando took out a small box and placed it in front of Lin En. Inside was something that looked like 9 rings. Each of them carries this thing with them. Judging from the runes on it, it may be a kind of magic for mutual communication, but the spell on it has long been invalid and cannot be tracked. "Leave it to me. I will ask Master Raphael to study it in depth when I have time." Lin En nodded calmly and put away these faceless rings, preparing to rework them into mystic rings when the time comes. Orlando nodded, without thinking much, and talked about another thing again. After the news of Harum's death was exposed, more than 30 wizards chose to leave the Yayata harbor, and some people directly changed their schools and joined other schools, and also took some apprentices with them. "Do you need me to send someone to invite them back?" "I think these people should be happy to do so," Orlando said with a smile. He felt that these wizards were most likely regretting their lives after knowing that Lin En had won the Corona medal. They would never have thought that the Yayata school was not only not declining, but had a tendency to soar. "No, since it's their own choice, let them go." Lin En shook his head, not regretting it. These people didn't have any sense of belonging to Yayata, and it might not be a good thing for them to stay. You know, sometimes internal traitors are more difficult to deal with than external enemies. It's true that he is in need of people now, but he doesn't want everyone. Lin En felt that although the entire port city had experienced a lot of hardships, it was not without benefits. At least most of the unstable factors in the school were eliminated. What about the poor people and their families who were affected by the disaster? Have they been arranged? Have the pensions been paid? Lin En asked with concern. Although the whole story of this matter had little to do with him, It was caused by Helram. The Parliament concealed this information for the stability of the wizard land. At least they had to settle these innocent people who were affected by the disaster. The total population of the entire Yaita port is not large. The poor living in the southern city area are dispensable waste in the eyes of wizards, but in Lin En's eyes, they are very good working population. I'm afraid Yaita can't come up with so much money now, Orlando said helplessly with a hesitant look on his face. Lin En was stunned. As the largest seaport city in the wizard land, it also monopolized a part of foreign trade, so it should be very rich. It's not that Helram secretly spent all the reserve funds of Yaita port when he was secretly studying psychic magic, right? Lin En quickly found some financial reports from a pile of information. After reading for a few minutes, he found that the economic situation of the entire Yaita could only be described as weird. First of all, wizards and civilians are completely two different economic systems, except that the latter need to supply food to the former. There is basically no much connection. After all, it is common for precious magic materials to be sold for more than a dozen magic gold coins. A laborer who does not know magic may not be able to save so much money after working for decades. Wizards basically do not engage in ordinary production activities. They make alchemical instruments and potions, and only wizards can afford them. Therefore, thousands of wizards and a large number of apprentices in the entire wizard land have formed a unique cycle, building an economic superstructure that is completely out of touch with the civilians. The most important thing is that it is a privileged class. They don't even pay taxes. In the past, the finances of the port city basically did not rely on taxes. There was no money to be made by plundering the civilians, and basically only a symbolic collection. The real big head relies on foreign trade. With the geographical advantage of the Yaita port close to the outside world, various ores and scarce products from the wizard land are continuously transported by merchant ships, and then they only need to turn around and sell them to Green Real City to make a lot of money. Yes, just make a lot of money. Although this is a nearly monopolistic business, foreign trade also means that the risk of exposing the entire wizard land needs to be borne. In exchange for the tacit approval of the Parliament, the scarce materials transported are all priced in advance. It is impossible to make huge profits from this. There is an annual income of about 30,000 magic gold coins, which is barely enough to supply the operation of the entire port city. Thanks to him, one of the three routes has been cut off before, and the largest source of finance is likely to shrink. Lin En immediately felt that the tens of thousands of magic gold coins he earned from selling glass, paper and even airships did not seem to be a lot. He could still make a fortune now, but it might not be the case in a few months. The entire wizard land has a population of only a few 100,000 people. The market is too small and will soon be saturated, so he has to consider expanding foreign trade. Many of his next big moves will basically require money. In addition, it will also be a considerable expense to appease the families of the poor who died in vain in the South City. Lin En thought for a long time and had a general idea in his mind, so he looked at Orlando. I probably already know the situation of Yaita Harbor. I will take out 10,000 magic gold coins to replenish the treasury and settle the innocent people in the South City first. We can't delay any longer. As for the remaining funds, use them all to buy these materials. Lin En handed over a thin sheet of paper that had been written on it. Orlando took it. No matter how many times he saw this white paper, he couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Who would have thought that this thing was made of wood? Well, saltpeter, charcoal, sulfur, brass. Orlando glanced at it. The paper was full of various raw materials, including very common things like saltpeter and charcoal, as well as some minerals that he had never heard of. Lin En also specially marked many characteristics of these minerals and asked him to find someone who knew these things. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203. This thing is called a magic internal combustion engine. Dean Lin, can you tell me what these things are used for? Orlando asked curiously. To make some weapons to deal with a war that may be coming, Lin explained. Orlando's expression became solemn. Although the news of the war was only circulated within the parliament, many wizards had already guessed a clue through the parliament's recent big moves. By the way, I also plan to continue to expand the Yaida Academy, and recall those wizard apprentices who have left the school, and even former wizards, back to Yaida, so that they can continue to study. Lin proposed again. Orlando was shocked and reacted for a long time. But what should we teach? Those wizard apprentices who were expelled from the academy were all over 30 years old. They had basically learned everything they could teach, but they could not be promoted due to their lack of talent. Not to mention the graduates, as they were formal wizards. They could not teach even if they wanted to. Of course, we teach chemistry, physics, and Olympiad mathematics, Lin said firmly. Chemistry, physics? Orlando paused. He knew about mathematical Olympiad. But what were these two subjects? You can also understand these two new subjects as the principles of magic, or the laws of how things work. Lin explained briefly, and finally asked Orlando to compile a list of alchemists, especially those wizards who had done some research on steam engines, and invite them all to the academy. At noon the next day, in the alchemy research room of Yaida Academy, more than 20 wizards gathered around a few large white papers and looked over and over. There was a very strange machine drawn on it. The components were very complicated and people couldn't understand it, but the exquisite structure attracted everyone's attention at the first time. Darren and others were also invited, but they were squeezed outside and didn't dare to compete with the wizards for the drawings. Only Lydia moved a high chair without hesitation and even wanted to climb on the table to look. Dean Lin, what is this? An alchemist looked at Lin in confusion, and then suddenly seemed to remember something and said in doubt, could it be the blueprint of the alchemical steam engine? Upon hearing this guess, the wizards present were all excited. The alchemical steam engine is the highest achievement of the Alchemy Association, and is known as a magical invention that can change the world. They are naturally very interested in this thing. Some people even dismantled the alchemical instruments placed on the ship and secretly studied it. Over the years, they have also made some achievements. However, the structure of the alchemical steam engine does not seem to be like this. They even suspect that the dean has taken the wrong blueprint. No, to be precise, it is an upgraded version of the steam engine. I call it an internal combustion engine, Lin En explained with a smile. Upgraded version? Philip and others looked at each other. Is there any difference between it and the steam engine? Another witch asked curiously. Its efficiency is more than 10 times that of the existing steam engine. Lin En replied affirmatively. He has checked the steam engine made by the Alchemy Association. The thermal efficiency is between 3% and 5%. Which can only be described as very inefficient. Steamships powered by this are not much faster than sailing warships when sailing on the sea, and the cruising speed of airships can only be maintained at a pitiful 15 kilometers per hour. Of course, this does not prevent the steam engine from being an epoch-making invention. How much? 10 times? A group of alchemists took a breath of cold air, looking at Lin En with a look of looking at a monster, and then looking at the drawings in front of them. Their eyes became much more eager. Can it be put on the airship? Lydia asked excitedly. Of course, no problem. It can increase the speed of the airship from 15 kilometers per hour to more than 70 kilometers. Lin En said a value that was as conservative as possible. It can also be used to drive ships or anything you want it to move. 70 kilometers? Wouldn't it take most of the day to get from Yaita to Green Rio? Philip said in astonishment. This is too fast. Is it really that fast? Lin En smiled, and then took the drawings and explained to a group of alchemists and halfling craftsmen such as Darren the operating principles and differences between steam and internal combustion engines. The essence of a steam engine is to boil water, so that the water in the boiler boils and turns into steam, and then sends it to the cylinder to push the piston to reciprocate. Simply put, it converts the chemical energy of the fuel into the thermal energy of steam, and then converts the thermal energy of the steam into mechanical energy, thereby generating a continuous source of power. As its upgraded version, the internal combustion engine reduces the steps, converts thermal energy into mechanical energy, and generates high temperature and high pressure airflow through the rapid combustion of fuel to drive the piston movement, so the efficiency is naturally much higher. As for its fuel problem, the most primitive internal combustion engine uses gas as fuel to provide energy. There are still coal resources in the wizard land. In fact, Lin En hopes to use hydrogen directly as fuel, which will not only increase the thermal efficiency to more than 50%, but also be very environmentally friendly and pollution-free. This idea was proposed as early as the 18th and 19th centuries, but the extraction, storage and transportation costs of hydrogen fuel are very high, and it is more cost-effective to use fossil fuels. However, for wizards, the production of hydrogen is not that difficult, which makes hydrogen-powered internal combustion engines possible. In this way, let alone letting the airship reach a speed of 70 km per hour, even 200 km is possible. However, the almost zero industrial level of the Yaita harbor gave Lin En a headache. He could only hope that these alchemists could think of ways to use magic to solve various technical problems and create an alchemical internal combustion engine that combines technology and magic. Even though Lin En explained the principles of the internal combustion engine in great detail, the large number of terms in the middle still made the alchemists ponder for a long time. After a dispute and discussion, they began to work on the transformation process. For example, how to improve the cylinder's ability to withstand high temperature and high pressure, and how to record the alchemical array into the internal combustion engine to continuously produce combustible gas without being destroyed by the high-temperature environment inside. Lydia and others did not participate in the research on magic modification, but were very interested in something called gears in the internal combustion engine. Several gears of different sizes are embedded together, and power is transmitted by rotation, which is very magical. Although she has seen similar things on steam engines before, they are far less sophisticated. P.S. Ask for support in the third update. Chapter 204 The high ground of public opinion must never be in the hands of others. For a whole afternoon and the whole night, Lin En explained the operating principles of various mechanical structures to a group of alchemists, and was even more confused by Lydia's questions, which seemed to have become 100,000 whys. However, with the joint efforts of everyone, the drawings of the first generation of magic internal combustion engines were already made at dawn the next day. Although it looked decent, Lin En had no idea whether it could succeed, so he could only let them make it first and slowly modify the problems. In the next few days, Lin En did not care about it anymore, and handed the production of the internal combustion engine to Philip and Darren, asking them to study it slowly and tell him when the test product was ready. He put all his energy into compiling new textbooks and establishing a new newspaper. Lin En knew the importance of public opinion very well. It could directly determine what people saw, heard, and even thought every day. The previous controller of Yaita Harbor, Huram, did not care about it, and the parliament did not pay enough attention to it. But Lin En would not let the high ground of public opinion be in the hands of others. So a few days later, a newspaper called Magic Daily was quickly listed in the most conspicuous place in every store. The thin white paper immediately attracted everyone's attention, and then the content on it caught their eyes. The front page of the newspaper was about the description of the tragedy in the South City district and the subsequent treatment plan. For the sake of the stability of the Yaita harbor, Huram was not mentioned on it, but most of the pot was thrown on the evil wizard Merc. However, this matter is indeed related to Merc, and it is not entirely slander. For ordinary people, what they are most shocked about is obviously not this, but the new mayor of the harbor city, the magic star of Yaita, is actually going to pay pensions to the poor people who were affected by the disaster. This is simply thunder-like news. When did those high-ranking wizards actually care about the poor? After receiving the resettlement fee, some poor people in the southern district were so moved that they burst into tears. Mary was one of them. The soul-devouring formation that suddenly appeared in the South City took away her husband's life without warning, leaving only her and 2 young children. The black bread she had received before was already very little. Mary even considered going to the magic workshop to be a test subject for the wizard's potions. It was said that if she was lucky enough, not only would there be no side effects, but she would also be able to gain power far beyond that of ordinary people. Mary knew very well that the probability was very small. There were many people in the South City who had become physically deformed due to taking wizards' potions. If they were not desperate, not many people would be willing to joke about their own safety. Fortunately, while she was still hesitating, she received news of the pension payment. People like her who had lost important labor in their families could receive a full 50 silver coins. If they save some money, the family can survive for 1 or 2 years. Mary was very grateful. Then she gritted her teeth and spent 5 copper coins to buy a copy of the Magic Daily, and asked the owner of the store to tell her who was illiterate. Mary's decision was undoubtedly correct, because the newspaper also announced 2 important news. The first is that several new paper-making workshops, glass workshops and airship workshops have been built in the Iida harbor, and a large number of workers are recruited. It is estimated that about 1,500 people will be needed. Not only will they be provided with food and accommodation, but they will also receive 8 to 15 silver coins per month depending on the type of work. Priority will be given to those who can count and have worked as craftsmen. In addition, the families of those who died in the South District City tragedy will also be given priority. Seeing this, Mary's eyes suddenly lit up. There was no indication of gender on it, only the minimum and maximum age limits, and she was undoubtedly qualified. 8 silver coins are not worth mentioning in the eyes of wizards, but it is not a small amount for ordinary civilians. It is enough to support a family of 3, and even live a luxurious life of eating white bread every day and occasionally adding eggs. The second thing is that the Yayata Academy will expand its enrollment. Apprentice wizards who are willing to continue their studies and even former wizards can return to school. In addition, the Magic Daily also mentioned that Yayata will build a school to recruit ordinary people in the future. Build a school for ordinary people who don't know magic? Seeing this, Mary couldn't believe her eyes. Yes, that's what Lord Orlando said. Teach mathematical Olympiad, chemistry and physics. The shop owner said very confidently. He also confirmed it with the wizard several times at the beginning. But what can we do by learning these? Mary said with a blank face. I heard from Lord Orlando that the Lord of the City is very short of manpower now. These students can join the real alchemy workshop in the future and become assistants to wizards. Just like Lydia, the shop owner explained patiently. Lydia, hearing the other party say this, Mary immediately became excited. In the port of Yaida, everyone knows that this halfling girl who usually runs around and likes to make some strange things has now transformed herself into a trusted right-hand man of the city lord. Even those halflings who they usually look down on have lived a very superior life, and it is rumored that they can earn several gold coins every month. The power of example is undoubtedly powerful. Mary silently calculated in her heart whether to send her 2 children to the academy at that time. The tuition for each person is 10 silver coins, and 2 people will spend nearly half of the pension. But when she thought that they could become assistants to the wizards in the future and would not have to stay in the South City to make a living like herself, Mary gritted her teeth and made up her mind. As long as she can enter the workshop to work, the monthly income will be enough to support the daily expenses of the 2 children. Mary thought of her lost husband again, and prayed in her heart that life would slowly get better. Also reading the newspaper were the wizards in the harbor city and many apprentices who had graduated. They had completely different attitudes towards Lin's re-education plan. Some refused out of shame, or even sneered at it. But many wizards were interested. They all knew that the current dean of the academy, Lin, was a genius who specialized in magic theory. Although he was young, he had created many novel and powerful magics. Moreover, there had been rumors in the harbor city that the other party had been promoted to a great wizard, so the number of people who signed up to return to school was far more than Lin had imagined. Chapter 205 Lydia, we have made the magic internal combustion engine. After being closed for a month and a half, the academy, which was closed due to the South City tragedy and the magic seminar, reopened. I really miss it. It's been many years since I came here, right? Albert said with emotion, gazing at everything in the academy that was familiar yet unfamiliar. He didn't expect that one day he would step into this place again as a student and attend classes in the same academy with his son. Although this feeling was a bit uncomfortable, Albert still came, not for the sake of learning much knowledge, but hoping to take this opportunity to get to know the talented Mr. Lin En. There are many people who have the same idea as Albert, so there are as many as 200 former wizards returning to school this time, and there are countless wizard apprentices. Due to the large number of people, there is only one teacher, so Lin En has to teach them in batches. Good afternoon, welcome back to school. I am Lin En, the new dean of Yaito Academy. Lin En stood in front of the podium, looking at the wizards sitting in the classroom, and smiled and greeted. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Lin En. Albert stood up first and returned the greeting. All the wizards present also stood up and saluted. This was not only because of the relationship between the professor and the students, but also because the other party was the leader of the Yaito school. Sit down. Everyone is a former wizard, and you must have unique insights into magic. I opened this course just to explain the elemental laws that I understand and summarize for everyone to discuss. I call it chemistry. Lin En did not put on an arrogant attitude because of his status. While speaking, he asked the goblins to distribute the textbooks. Albert looked at the exquisite book cover in front of him curiously. The whole book was made of that special white paper. He reached out and opened the first page. There was a preface written in vigorous and powerful handwriting on it. Chemistry is a natural discipline that studies the composition, structure, properties, transformation and application of matter at the atomic and molecular levels. Dean Lin En, what do these atoms and molecules mean? A male wizard asked with a little puzzlement. Atoms are the smallest particles that make up simple substances and compound molecules, which are what we often call elements. Lin En explained, and molecules are made up of atoms, and are the smallest particles of chemical reactions. Lin En raised his hand, and a small water ball soon appeared in front of everyone. For example, water is formed by many water molecules, and the elements that make it up are hydrogen and oxygen. The chemical formula is H2O, also known as dihydrogen monoxide. Aren't those L and Fula? There was a slight discussion from the audience. This is the name of the elements hydrogen and oxygen in the wizard land. It is said that they were named after two wizards who discovered them in a long time ago. How much do you know about hydrogen and oxygen? Lin En asked again. No. Oxygen is the source of life. If an ordinary person who can't do magic is placed in an oxygen-free environment, he will die soon, Albert said in a deep voice. For example, the three-ring magic, live forbidden zone, creates an oxygen-free environment, allowing the enemy to die in a painful struggle. These two elements can be used to release fire magic, another wizard also added. Besides these, Lin En continued to ask. Albert frowned slightly. Are you asking how many kinds of magic require these two elements? No, I mean their chemical formula, boiling point, density, application, specific heat capacity, critical temperature. Lin En blurted out a long list of terms, which made everyone dizzy. For example, hydrogen, because its density is very low, when a large amount of hydrogen is filled into an object, it can make the object float. While Lin En was speaking, he transformed a large amount of hydrogen with his magic power and bound it around himself. His body soon floated off the ground. The wizards present were all excited to see this. That is to say, maybe they can use hydrogen to develop flying magic? Is the airship you made suspended by hydrogen? Albert immediately thought of this. No, hydrogen is a flammable substance. If it is used to make an airship, it will turn into a fireball in the sky if you are not careful. Lin En shook his head. So I used another element. I will explain it in detail later. Then, Lin En created another huge magic ball mixed with hydrogen and oxygen, and then fired it out of the window. The magic ball broke open under a banyan tree, and a large amount of gas stored inside gushed out, followed by a fireball. A violent explosion soon rang in everyone's ears, and the fire and flames shot up high. The poor banyan tree had been blown into two pieces. The tree surface was bumpy, and the burning branches and leaves were scattered all over the ground. A huge hole was also blown out of the soft ground. The wizards in the classroom looked out the window one after another, and they were all amazed. This already had the destructive power of ordinary three-ring magic, And the casting process was not complicated. Even a one-ring wizard could do it easily. The best ratio of hydrogen-oxygen chemical reaction is 2 to 1. At that time, only a little flame is needed to trigger a violent explosion, and their product is water. Lin En introduced calmly. The wizards present hurriedly recorded this new combination magic, and then they realized that this so-called chemistry class was to study the nature of elements and the principles of magic, so as to develop new magic. Albert was flipping through the chemistry book in his hand, looking at the description of various elements on the pages, and fell into deep shock. It seems that the secret society's understanding of elements is far beyond their imagination. This is no longer detailed, but the various characteristics of the elements have been studied clearly. What Albert didn't know was that Lin En took into account that the composition of the two worlds might not be the same, and it had not been confirmed by experiments, so he did not mark the atomic weight, element period, electronic configuration, atomic structure and other factors. Lin En also opened this chemistry class with the idea of letting these wizards help him verify it. After all, it was too slow for him to study alone. Just when Lin En was ready to explain the other properties of the elements, a burst of hurried footsteps suddenly came from outside the door, and then the door of the classroom was opened. Albert and the others looked over displeased. They were immersed in the great thought of exploring the essence of elements, but were interrupted by the sudden sound of the door opening. Who on earth was so blind that he dared to disturb them at this time? It was Lydia who rushed in. The halfling girl's face was filled with excitement and joy, and she shouted happily, "Dean Lin En, the internal combustion engine. We have made the magic internal combustion engine. P.S. 2 updates today. I will continue to update tomorrow after I sort out the plot. Thank you for your support." Chapter 206. The debut of the alchemical internal combustion engine. Alchemical internal combustion engine? What is that? Albert and others were at a loss. Lin En was also a little surprised. This was much faster than he had imagined. Professor Philip and the others are already preparing for the first experiment. If we go too late, we won't be able to see it. Lydia's tone was extremely excited. She was sweating all over after running all the way. Her cheeks were flushed, just like a ripe apple. Lin En smiled and nodded, then turned to look at the wizards in the classroom. "Everyone, why not go and have a look together? It happens that this internal combustion engine uses hydrogen as fuel." Albert and others got up and followed, and a group of people left the classroom in such a mighty manner. "Dean Lin En, what is this alchemical internal combustion engine?" a wizard asked curiously. "Does this have anything to do with the steam engine of the Alchemy Association? It is much more powerful than the steam engine," Lydia said with great pride, and then added another sentence for fear that everyone could not understand how much it was. "At least 10 times more powerful." Although this was the first official experiment, they had started it before to test whether it could work properly. The external gears turned so fast that she could hardly see clearly. "Hurry up," Lydia kept urging along the way, obviously not wanting to miss the debut of the internal combustion engine. When they arrived in front of the alchemy workshop, a very tall and large carriage frame suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It was obviously modified from a carriage, but the 4 wooden boards on the carriage were removed, leaving only a base, and there were 2 more wheels under the shaft in front of the carriage used to tie camels and horses. In addition, there was an iron box more than 1 meter high on the base, which was firmly embedded in the back half of the base. After Lydia's introduction, Albert realized that this was the so-called alchemical internal combustion engine. At this moment, a group of alchemists were arguing about who should drive this alchemical 4-wheeled vehicle. Just like Lydia's previous flight, this was also a moment destined to be recorded in history. "Okay, stop arguing. I think this opportunity should belong to Dean Lin En." Philip stopped the quarrel and looked solemnly at Lin En and others who were walking over. The alchemists present immediately shut up. Indeed, the key to their ability to make an alchemical internal combustion engine was the blueprint given by Lin En. However, Lin En took a look at the simple 4-wheeled vehicle, especially the gears, chains and brake levers. He was worried that it would lose control or fall apart in the middle of the journey, so he coughed lightly and declined tactfully. "No, I don't have any driving experience. Since this 4-wheeled alchemical vehicle was made by you all, the first driver should be decided by drawing lots or voting." Under Lin En's humility, The alchemists quickly selected the first driver by drawing lots, and Philip was naturally the luckiest one. Darren, Lydia and other halflings could only watch helplessly, although they also participated in the production of the alchemical vehicle. They did not dare to compete with these wizards for this honor. Philip, victorious, strode onto the carriage. Because he was in such a hurry, he didn't even get a seat ready, but he didn't mind and put his right hand on the alchemical steam engine. Albert stared at it intently, very curious whether this thing was really 10 times more powerful than the steam engine as Lydia said. Also gathered in front of the alchemical workshop were thousands of students from Ida College. The black crowd lined up on both sides, leaving an aisle for the companions. With the continuous injection of magic power into it, the alchemical internal combustion engine also began to operate. A large amount of magic power was quickly converted into a certain proportion of hydrogen and oxygen by the internal alchemical formation and directly transported to the cylinder. Then the internal mixed elements vibrated rapidly, heated up until they were ignited, and the huge driving force generated by the high temperature and high pressure gas drove the connecting rod and crankshaft below through the piston to rotate non-stop. The iron box immediately emitted a rumbling sound, like the roar of a wild beast. Under the gaze of the crowd, the two wheels at the rear, connected by the chain and gear, spontaneously rotated, driving the alchemical four-wheeled vehicle to gallop away. "It's moving! It's really moving!" Darren and others shouted excitedly. Although they had expected it, they still couldn't hide their joy when they really saw this scene. So fast. Pierce and others gathered on both sides of the road only felt a gust of wind. Philip drove the four-wheeled vehicle past them almost with a whoosh, like a flying arrow. No, Pierce even thought it was faster than this, but they soon discovered that the speed of this car seemed to be getting faster and faster. Philip, who was in the carriage, experienced it more deeply. Everything around him was moving away from him quickly. The end of the journey he had drawn before was also past in an instant. The huge wind resistance made him squint his eyes. Too fast. Too fast. Philip's legs were shaking, and he even had the illusion that he was about to fly. However, this feeling of speeding was very fascinating. Philip not only did not intend to slow down, but increased the output of magic power, wanting to try out the limit of this thing. The rotating wheels almost turned into afterimages, rolling out a long rut on the road. The bearing capacity of the cylinder soon reached the upper limit, but the gears collapsed before it. At the ultra-high speed of hundreds of revolutions per minute, the gears located at the rear wheels for the special transmission of kinetic energy were the first to fail and broke directly. Click. At first there was a slight muffled sound, and then there was a chain reaction. The gears that flew out quickly made the entire alchemy car lose control. Philip was surprised to find that he really flew up, spinning in the air, and then hit the hard road head-on. His body rolled on the ground for several circles and he couldn't stand up for a long time. Everyone present was stunned and hurried forward to check the situation. "Master Philip. Are you okay? Professor, are you okay? Are you injured?" With the help of everyone, Philip sat down with difficulty, because he had added a mage shield to his body at the last moment as protection. Although Philip looked dusty, fortunately he was not injured, and he kept muttering to himself, "Too fast. Too fast." Chapter 207. The first magic revolution is about to end before it even begins. What about the speed? Did you record it? After Philip came to his senses, he asked without paying any attention to his embarrassed figure. "It's a total of 600 meters from the starting point to the end point, which takes 30 seconds. An alchemist saw the magic clock in his hand and said hesitantly. As for the second half, Philip flew out directly because the vehicle was inexplicably out of control and fell apart. He didn't have time to record it at all. The speed in the second half was about 90 kilometers per hour. Lin En said with emotion. He had calculated it through the data of the intelligent brain. Hearing this value, everyone present was shocked beyond words. "This is no longer fast. It is simply flying." "Is this the power of the alchemical internal combustion engine?" Albert murmured to himself. Even though they had limited knowledge of alchemy, they also understood what such a speed meant. Orlando was even more shocked. As early as a week ago, he heard Lin En say that he wanted to make some weapons to deal with the next war. In fact, he didn't have much hope for this. After all, The time left for them was very limited, and war was not like other things. Even if some powerful alchemical instruments were made, it would be difficult to affect the war situation. In contrast, he hoped that Lin En would focus all his energy on becoming a great wizard. However, the extraordinary speed and power of the alchemical internal combustion engine shocked Orlando greatly. He imagined that there were 100 such alchemical vehicles, with armor made of steel on the outside, rushing on the battlefield, and no one could stop them. Just thinking about it made people excited. After the initial excitement, Philip and others walked to the overturned alchemical four-wheeled vehicle and checked it out, ready to find out what went wrong. The broken gears directly caused the vehicle to lose control, and it caused a chain reaction, causing the four-wheeled vehicle to be severely damaged. A group of alchemists soon began to argue and discuss. "It's probably because of the cylinder you designed. The explosion of the hydrogen-oxygen mixture is too violent. I said before that the thickness of the steel should be increased." After looking at it for a while, an alchemist found that the exterior of the internal combustion engine had been slightly deformed. It was estimated that the other internal parts were also seriously damaged. He immediately suspected that the piston or the tie rod might be broken, which caused the vehicle to lose control. The wizard next to him jumped up and cursed. "You're talking nonsense. My cylinder is fine. I mixed the blood of the fire lion into the steel. There is absolutely no problem with the ability to withstand high temperatures. There must be something wrong with the gears and chains you made. And the wheels are crooked. Which idiot designed this?" It was said that the material must be resistant to pressure. It must be resistant to pressure. The discussion and dispute continued, and no one was willing to admit that it was their own mistake that caused their rollover. Lin En walked forward, checked it carefully, and said helplessly, "The strength of these materials is not up to standard. With the current industrial level of Yaida, the strength of the steel produced is limited. This simple four-wheeled vehicle is forced to accelerate to 90 km per hour, which is indeed beyond its bearing capacity. It will fall apart directly. In addition, the design of the wheels is also problematic. The two front wheels should be smaller than the rear wheels, which will help balance. We can also add a steering shaft and a tie rod to the front wheels to give this car the function of steering, as well as deceleration and acceleration." Lin En kept adding. Philip and others quickly took out the design drawings and wrote down Lin En's words, especially the steering and speed control functions mentioned by the other party, which are exactly the topics they have been studying. Lydia looked at Lin En, who was talking eloquently with admiration. From making airships, to making internal combustion engines, to vehicle design, it seems that there is nothing that this dean does not understand. In a few days, I will organize a few books related to fluid mechanics, all of which are summarized by the masters in the Secret Law Society. If you have free time, read more. You can always use them," Lin En said with lingering thoughts. Philip and the others nodded, not knowing how terrifying the fluid mechanics that Lin En was talking about was. "Dean Lin En, what drives the internal combustion engine is the hydrogen explosion you mentioned before?" Albert asked. He was very puzzled as to how this internal combustion engine converted the explosion into the driving force of the vehicle. "Yes. What the internal combustion engine does is to convert thermal energy into mechanical energy, and use the principle of gas expansion when heated to generate propulsion." Lin En explained the principle of the internal combustion engine to everyone present in as much detail as possible. In normal times, this is definitely a key technology that needs to be kept secret, but Lin En has no intention of hiding it this time, because he is really short of manpower. Improving the alchemical internal combustion engine requires manpower, designing a new ironclad warship requires manpower, and researching gunpowder also requires manpower. He wanted to split one person into two people, anyone who can understand and comprehend it, no matter if he is a wizard apprentice or a former wizard, or even just an ordinary person who can't do magic, will be immediately caught to do research for him, and treatment and status will not be a problem. "Is this chemistry?" Albert nodded as if he understood something. Although he only understood the general idea, he could see how sophisticated the design of the internal combustion engine was. "No, this is chemistry plus physics," Lin En said with a smile. The experiment conducted in Yaita College spread throughout the Yaita harbor the next day under the publicity of the Magic Daily. Everyone knew that under the leadership of the lord of the city, those wizards had developed an alchemical car with 4 wheels. Not only did it run as fast as the wind, but it also did not need horses or camels to pull it, and it could move on its own. The rumors soon became more and more outrageous. According to the exaggerated descriptions of some students, the alchemy car was not only fast but also a powerful weapon. It once launched Lord Philip like an alchemy cannon, with amazing destructive power. The outrageous rumors made Philip extremely embarrassed every time he was asked about it. But he didn't know how to explain it. This news soon caused a huge sensation as the caravan brought the magic daily into Greenreel. Whether it was the maximum speed of 90 km per hour or the alchemy internal combustion engine that was rumored to be 10 times more efficient than the steam engine, it was unbelievable. The most unacceptable were naturally the wizards and the Alchemy Association, who were dedicated to researching and improving steam engines. The first magic revolution they were planning, was it going to end before it even began? Chapter 208. A new era of magic is coming. Perfect. It's a perfect work. In the square inches front of the Alchemy Association in Greenreel, the great alchemist Dennis looked at the steam car running automatically and spewing smoke in front of him with an intoxicated expression. After years of continuous efforts, he finally improved the 6th generation of alchemical steam engine, which not only reduced the size by half, but also greatly improved the performance. Have the speed and load been measured? Dennis looked at the apprentice beside him and asked. Reporting to Master Dennis, the average speed is about 45 km per hour, or it can maintain half the speed with a load of 10 tons of cargo. The witch who answered was so excited that she couldn't express it in words. This is definitely a new breakthrough. Very good, very good. Dennis nodded with satisfaction, and he let out a breath of anger in his heart. 20 years ago, when they just made the steam engine, they were ridiculed by many people, because the efficiency of the initial version of the steam engine was very low. The alchemical steam car produced could only travel 3 to 5 km per hour. According to some people, even if a piece of grass was tied in front of a turtle, it would run faster than his alchemical car. Compared to horses and camels, its only advantage is that it does not need to eat, drink, defecate, or rest, and can work around the clock. However, it is not as good as the spiritual creatures summoned by psychic wizards and the golems they made. Although the results of his research were not taken seriously, Dennis did not give up. After generations of improvements, the steam engine was finally recognized by the Parliament and became the main power of all new ships. The next goal is naturally to replace land transportation. His new steam car can pull a full 10 tons of cargo, travel non-stop, and consume only the magic power of a wizard apprentice every 100 kilometers. Dennis has foreseen that a magic revolution will be started by himself, and billowing steam will fill every corner of the wizard's land. That is a miracle created by alchemy and magic. A new era of magic is coming. Just as Dennis was fantasizing, a panicked shout suddenly came from the door. Oh no, Lord Dennis! What happened? Dennis, who was immersed in fantasy, woke up instantly and looked at the startled wizard angrily. Is the Parliament going to shorten our construction period? Dennis asked with a frown. In order to cope with the possible war, several speakers planned to purchase 100 steam cars, and all steamships had to be remodeled, and the internal power was replaced with the latest alchemical steam engine. Everything must be completed within 3 months. This is undoubtedly a very difficult task, and it may not be completed in time. It can't be that the war will be brought forward again, right? No, it's not that, Lord Dennis. The wizard hesitated for a long time before he said hesitantly, now it's spreading throughout Greenreel that the Yata school has made something called an internal combustion engine. If it is installed on an alchemical car, it can run 90 km per hour and can also launch wizards like an alchemical cannon. Absurd. Dennis cursed. 90 km per hour. What is that concept? The maximum speed of a fire lion is not much faster than this, but the monster still needs to eat, drink, defecate, rest and sleep, and it is impossible to maintain the highest speed all the time. The training cycle is also in decades, which is why Dennis is confident that he can replace it. After all, the biggest advantage of alchemical instruments is that they can be mass-produced. But the newspaper says that it is the invention of Mr. Lin En, and thousands of people have witnessed it with their own eyes. It is as fast as a gust of wind, and the thermal efficiency is 10 times higher than that of a steam engine. The wizard said cautiously, I heard that the adults in the parliament are already considering whether to cancel the purchase of steam engines. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Dennis said firmly, the efficiency is 10 times higher than that of a steam engine? Dennis never believes that there is such a thing, although he is still far from touching the limit of steam power. After generations of improvements, the steam engine he has produced is already perfect, and the speed is only about 40 kilometers per hour. Of course, if factors such as endurance and load are not considered, the maximum speed can be increased a lot, but it is impossible to reach such a terrifying speed of 90 kilometers per hour. This is not magic. It must be false propaganda. Not only Dennis, but also the members of the Alchemy Association felt that this rumor was too unreliable. The most important thing is that they spent so much effort to make an improved steam engine, and were about to show their skills, but then they were eliminated. How could they accept this? I'm going to Yayata now, right now, right now, Dennis shouted angrily, and then turned his attention to the steam car he had just completed. Not only did he want to go, but he also wanted to drive the result of his hard research. Dennis wanted to see what the internal combustion engine was, and it dared to claim that its efficiency was 10 times higher than that of a steam engine. 5 days later, Yayata Harbor, a strange-looking alchemical machine slowly drove into the aisle of the city. A huge alchemical boiler was placed at the back, emitting steam, attracting the attention of passers-by. Many people whispered whether this was a new work of the alchemy workshop. Dennis and the others sitting in the car all looked unhappy. This was not because of the townspeople's discussions, but because after driving for a long time, Dennis discovered that this alchemy car had another shortcoming. That is, it was too shaky. Part of it was related to the bad road conditions, and the other part was the problem of the steam car itself. Welcome to Yayata Harbor. As soon as the few people entered Yayata, Orlando, who received the news, rushed over. In fact, in recent days, due to the hot sales of Magic Daily, there are not a few alchemists who came to Yayata to check the situation, and without exception, they were all drafted by Lin En. However, when he saw that the person who came was Dennis, Orlando became a little nervous. He knew that this alchemist was the inventor of the steam engine, and he was somewhat worried that the other party would come to make trouble. Fortunately, Orlando soon discovered that Master Raphael, who had a good relationship with Lin En, was also on this steam car, and his heart was immediately relieved. Come on. There's just one seat left in my steam car. You can just show us the way. Dennis patted the seat next to him, which he had left empty on purpose so that the people of the Yayata school could experience how comfortable and convenient his alchemical steam car was. Chapter 209 I once used it to destroy half of the port city. At Dennis's enthusiastic invitation, Orlando quickly sat on it, and then he experienced the comfort and convenience of the alchemical steam car. It was not only slow, but also shaking. The alchemical car made by the alchemical workshop also had the problem of shaking, but according to Lord Lin, if a tire could be added to the wheel and the ground could be repaired to be flat, this problem could be alleviated to a great extent. What is that wheel? Dennis did not rush to ask about the internal combustion engine, but pointed to a huge and towering wheel in the distance and asked curiously. The moment he entered the Yayata harbor, he noticed this thing, which was more than 20 meters high and was still turning slowly without stopping. That is a water wheel, used to irrigate farmland. Lord Lin is very concerned about those civilians, Orlando explained with a smile. Almost everyone who came in asked the same question, so he was already familiar with the answer and soon introduced the principle of this thing to Dennis. In fact, it is to use the inertia of the water to rotate the spokes, and lift the buckets filled with river water step by step. When they reach the top, the buckets will naturally tilt, and the water will be injected into the aqueduct and finally flow into the irrigated farmland, using the power of nature itself. A very ingenious design. Dennis nodded and exclaimed, I heard that the wizards of the Yayata school have made an alchemical instrument with a speed of 90 kilometers per hour. Is that true? Raphael on the side asked the first question. He was very interested in Lin En's new research, so he took a ride this time, and he also represented the parliament to evaluate the internal combustion engine. Of course it's true. In fact, there was a new breakthrough yesterday. The upper limit of the maximum speed has been increased to 110 kilometers, Orlando explained. 110 kilometers? Why is it getting more and more outrageous? Dennis frowned, and couldn't help but wonder if the other party was exaggerating. Behind him, the members of the Alchemy Association also looked indignant, but before they could say anything to refute, a violent explosion soon sounded. It was like a thunder explosion, and the ground seemed to shake violently. What's wrong? Could it be an earthquake? Dennis said subconsciously. The land of wizards is a huge island standing on the sea. Earthquakes happen every few years. The inspiration of vibration magic is based on strange phenomena, although the elementalists have not figured out where its source is so far. However, Dennis soon discovered that this should not be an earthquake, because a billowing smoke floated out from the sky above the station in front of the alchemy workshop in the distance. Maybe an alchemy instrument exploded, an alchemist said gloatingly. And the original steam engine would also have problems such as exploding boilers. No, it should be Lin En and his team experimenting with the power of gunpowder, Orlando explained while rubbing his ears. Gunpowder? Everyone present was stunned. Dennis only realized at this time that despite such a big commotion, the townspeople on the road were not panicked at all, as if they were used to it. Orlando did not explain. After all, he did not know much about this thing. He only knew that it was another very powerful weapon. With many doubts, Dennis and others soon arrived at an open space in front of the alchemy workshop, where a large group of people were gathered. The surface in the distance was bumpy, as if it had been bombed by fire magic. Lin En also saw the steam car coming at the first time, and led everyone to greet it. Long time no see, Master Raphael. Lin En saw Raphael getting off the car at a glance, and greeted him with a smile. It's been a while, but I've heard your name a lot in Green Reel. Raphael also laughed, and then turned around to introduce to Lin En. This is the inventor of the alchemy steam engine, Dennis. Lin En's eyes lit up. He was definitely a talent to be able to invent a steam engine on his own. It's a great honor to meet you, Master Dennis. Your steam engine is definitely an epoch-making invention. Lin En stretched out his hand and shook it with Dennis, thinking about how to keep him in the harbor town. Dennis frowned, and for a moment he couldn't tell whether the other party's words were sarcastic or sincere. The members of the Alchemy Society in the back obviously regarded Lin En's words as a provocation, and their faces instantly darkened. One of the wizards immediately stood up and said with an unwavering look, Sir Lin En, we came to Yayata just to see if your internal combustion engine is really as magical as the rumors say. Of course there is no problem, but please wait a moment. The last experiment of the day will be completed soon. Lin En nodded casually, and then looked at Darren on the side, indicating that he should arrange the last experiment. Several halflings immediately got busy, stuffing a pile of black stones into wooden barrels, and then piled up a lot of packaged white phosphorus and gravel and placed them hundreds of meters away. Darren was extremely careful, as he knew the danger of this thing. However, after putting the gunpowder away and retreating to a safe area, the expressions of the halflings became expectant, and they all turned their heads to look at Lin En. Lin En, can we start? Lydia asked excitedly. Seeing the other party nod, she took out a rocket and put it on the special longbow. Lydia was only about 1.3 meters tall, and the longbow in her hand was not much smaller than her. It looked a little funny, but the powerful power brought by the racial talent was no joke. The longbow was pulled straight into a full moon, pointing to the sky. As the bowstring was released, a flaming red arrow flew out and flew in a parabola straight to the wooden barrel in the distance. The wizards watching covered their ears. What was going on? The wizards of the Alchemy Society didn't understand, but Dennis remembered the loud noise he had just heard. At the same time, the rocket had penetrated the wooden board, and the black gunpowder inside was quickly ignited and then exploded. Boom! It was as if thunder exploded in my ears, accompanied by dazzling flames rising into the sky. The surging flames instantly covered the surrounding land, and the flames and mud flew. The target standing next to it was instantly blown to pieces. Dennis could clearly feel the heat wave that swept over, and his ears were buzzing. When the smoke dissipated, The grass in front of them had turned into a scorched earth. Because of the white phosphorus mixed inside, the flames continued to burn, almost turning the surrounding area into a sea of fire. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Knowledge and truth are never afraid of spreading and communicating. What a terrible power. Looking at the sea of fire spreading in front of him, Dennis's expression became very solemn. Although such an attack was not a threat to the great wizard, it was estimated that ordinary formal wizards would not be able to survive if they ran into it. The wizards of the Alchemy Society couldn't help but show horror on their faces. The attitude that was originally aggressive and wanted to find Lin En to argue with him suddenly eased a lot. Raphael remembered that he had seen an alchemical powder that would explode as long as it encountered fire, but it was far less destructive than this. This is black gunpowder. I used it to destroy half of the port city. Without waiting for everyone to ask, Lin En took the initiative to introduce it, and then shook his head. It's a pity. What a pity? Raphael asked hurriedly. Is it because the production cost is too high? No, the production of black gunpowder is not complicated, Lin En explained. I mean the power is still a little bit worse. If it is not mixed with fillers such as white phosphorus, the power of a black powder explosion alone is actually very limited, far less than TNT or RDX, cyclonic explosives. Is this bad enough? Everyone's faces were a little strange. Could it be that Lin En planned to use this thing to set a trap to deal with those cardinals? Orlando and others were excitedly discussing how to use the powerful destructive power of black powder in war. I know. Lydia waved her longbow, attracting everyone's attention, and confidently said her new idea. We can fill the alchemy car with this black stone and rush into the crowd. Raphael and others nodded involuntarily. This is a good way to exert its power. Good guy, a self-destructing truck, right? You are really wasting your talent if you don't go to carry out terrorist attacks, Lin En said with a smile. In fact, it is used to mine ore. Raphael and others were shocked. They have just seen the power of gunpowder, which is not weaker than the magic crystal cannon. As a result, you actually use it for mining? Lin En was also helpless. The biggest problem for the development of Yaita Harbor now is that the output of various ores is far from enough, especially steel, which is the foundation of all industries. Although there is an iron mine around Yaita, the mining efficiency is very touching, and it is far from enough to rely solely on manpower. It is not impossible to let wizards bomb with fire magic, but the official wizards are very precious. Who is willing to do this? Rely on those wizard apprentices? Forget it. Gunpowder is naturally the best choice. Later, we can consider whether to set up a musket team or an artillery team. Regarding the test of the power of black gunpowder, except for Lin En himself who was a little dissatisfied, it was undoubtedly a complete success. Dennis soon got his wish and saw the latest alchemical four-wheeled vehicle equipped with an internal combustion engine. Philip and others who made it can be said that they took the idea of saving steel that Lin En had instilled into them to the extreme, and pursued minimalism and pragmatism. In short, as long as it could pull ore, it would be fine. This made its appearance look very simple, with a steel frame, which formed a sharp contrast with the gorgeous steam carriage next to it. At the first sight of this thing, the wizards of the Alchemy Society couldn't help but feel a little contempt. That's it. However, after driving on the road of Yaita for a week in a four-wheeled vehicle, feeling the extraordinary speed, everyone fell silent, and Dennis was even more dejected and silent, with a look of despair on his face. He knew that the results of his painstaking research had become worthless, and decades of hard work might have been in vain. Mr. Lin En, can you let me see the drawings of the internal combustion engine? A wizard from the Alchemy Association asked unwillingly. But he also understood that the other party would not be able to take out such core technology. Lin En, who wanted to recruit people to do research, was very generous and asked Orlando to bring the design drawings. When the wizard took the drawings, His hands were shaking. He couldn't believe that the other party would hand over such a precious thing to him so easily. Dennis and others couldn't help but gather to check. The drawings were drawn in great detail, and even the internal parts and structures were marked. There was no need for Lin En to explain. After a discussion, the wizards of the Alchemy Association quickly figured out the structure and function of each part of the internal combustion engine. This should be a piston, just like a steam engine, used to provide power. The operating principle is very similar to that of a steam engine. The difference between them is that the combustion process of an internal combustion engine takes place inside the instrument. Is this the meaning of internal combustion? The earliest steam engine can also be called an external combustion engine, because the combustion process takes place outside, and the piston is pushed by the expansion of steam, so a lot of energy will be lost. The internal combustion engine is different. It exchanges air through an alchemical array and an outlet. The entire combustion process is limited to the inside of the cylinder, and the power provided is naturally much more powerful than steam. What a genius idea, Dennis said with emotion, and many improvement plans for steam engines emerged in his mind. But he knew that no matter how much improvement was made, it would be difficult to compare with the internal combustion engine in terms of efficiency. I have a doubt. This alchemical internal combustion engine is the creation of your Yayata school. Why are you willing to give us the drawings to see? Dennis asked, puzzled. I have always believed that knowledge and truth are never afraid of spreading and communicating. Lin En answered calmly. A person's power and wisdom are too small. Even if he only specializes in a certain field, he may not be able to see its limits in his lifetime. Magic theory needs to be innovative. If everyone sticks to the views of the school, then I think the wizard's land will not have the brilliant magic system today. As for the other point, Lin En did not say that the internal combustion engine was just an obsolete technology in the previous life. In his eyes, it was just something to be used for transition. Listening to Lin En's words, all the wizards of the Alchemy Association were shocked. As researchers and inventors of steam engines, they strictly guarded against this special alchemy technology and would never allow wizards from other schools to dismantle and study related instruments privately, believing that this was naked theft, although they failed to completely stop the outflow of technology in the end. However, Lin En did not care about the barriers between schools at all and directly handed over the core drawings to them for review. What a broad mind! Thinking of this, Dennis couldn't help but feel ashamed. P.S. Now I only owe one more chapter for rewards, which will be added tomorrow. As for the additional chapters for subscriptions, the total has increased by more than 900 average subscriptions so far, which is 4 chapters. I will save the manuscripts and add more chapters when it is an integer. Chapter 211. Do you really think there is an alchemical instrument more powerful than this, Master Dennis? Do you want to see the structure of this alchemical 4-wheel vehicle next? We just added steering, acceleration and deceleration functions to it, which are all very interesting and wonderful ideas. Lin En spoke again. Lin En's words were like the whispers of the devil, constantly stirring Dennis's mind, because these problems were also what he was studying but had not yet solved. But in the end, he shook his head, looked at the group of school wizards who were distracted, and said with a sigh, "No, there is no need to look at it anymore. Let's go back." Dennis knew very well that he had failed miserably in both invention and research attitude, and continuing to compare would only make him more desperate. Dean Lin En, please rest assured that the technology of internal combustion engines will never be revealed from us, Dennis promised very seriously. Although the other party said that he did not care about communication and dissemination, Dennis knew the importance of internal combustion engine technology, which was definitely a force that could change the magic world. Since this road is not feasible, why not change the track? Lin En's voice rang again. Dennis paused for a moment. He could understand the hidden meaning of these words and win them over to join the research of alchemical internal combustion engine. Dennis was surprised at Lin's open attitude towards alchemical research again. His face became a little hesitant. He always felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. After all, he came here with the intention of competing. I think it will be a short time before a war sweeping the entire wizard land comes. Judging from the attitudes of several speakers, the situation is probably not optimistic. Lin said very seriously, There is no doubt that this is a crisis for the entire magic world. No one can stay out of it. The time left for us is very limited, and the use of alchemical internal combustion engine is still in its initial stage. More people need to join in and strive for every chance of winning. Dennis was somewhat moved. After all, what Lin said was right. The church would not care which school of wizards they were. They would just kill them all. In addition, I think the internal combustion engine is far from the limit. There must be a better and simpler way to use this power. It's just that we haven't found it yet. Lin added, "Do you really think there is an alchemical instrument more powerful than this?" Dennis said quite unexpectedly. In his opinion, this internal combustion engine is already perfect, and there is almost no upper limit. It only needs more intense heat and stronger explosions to bring more powerful power. It can be said that the only thing that limits its performance is the material problem. Of course, I firmly believe this. Lin En nodded very confidently, and then smiled and said, "Before the appearance of the internal combustion engine, didn't you also think that steam was the answer to everything?" "You are right. There is no end to the research of magic." Dennis nodded, no longer hesitated, and immediately agreed to participate in the development and improvement of the alchemical internal combustion engine as a non-staff member. The Wizards of the Alchemy Association did not object. They spent half of their lives on the research of steam engines, but found that this thing has been eliminated. Only by applying the relevant development experience to the research of internal combustion engines can the previous efforts have some value. Lin En was very happy to have successfully fooled a group of researchers again. This meant that he could free up the alchemists who were originally studying internal combustion engines to study other technologies, such as muskets and artillery. In the next week, the entire harbor city was full of vitality. According to the townspeople, new things would emerge almost every once in a while. For example, the water wheel erected beside the river that automatically irrigates the farmland, and the alchemy car that runs faster than the wind. It is said that the wizards have also created an alchemical instrument called a textile machine that can use magic to make clothes. Mary believed this because she had several good friends who entered the weaving workshop. It is said that one person can weave hundreds of meters of cloth in a day. If this is not magic, what is it? However, in order to earn more silver coins, Mary chose to enter the glass workshop. It was like a furnace, with steam rising from the closed room. The workers poured piles of fine sand into the living furnace, and the wizards added magical powder into it, and then the sand would become a kind of transparent crystal under the action of some strange power. This is not an easy job. The most difficult part is shaping. It is common for poor people with poor skills to get their arms burned, but no one complains because they can get a full 12 silver coins for this job. The shiny coins represent the hope of life. All workshops are constantly expanding, and the total number of employees soon exceeds 4,000. In the past 2 months since returning to Harbor Town, Lin En has experienced the feeling of spending money like water. According to the average of 10 silver coins per worker per month, that is a full 400 magic gold coins. And this is only the smallest of all expenses. The real big head is the construction of various factories and the salary of wizards. Lin En is somewhat worried whether this outflow of money will cause inflation. Fortunately, the productivity of Harbor Town is also increasing rapidly, and it has not caused too much price increase in a short period of time. The night of the 7th day soon arrived, and a huge full moon hung high in the sky, casting bright moonlight. It's Sunday. Lin En stared at the bright moon in the sky. His expression became a little deep, which meant that a full year had passed since he came here. The waxing and waning of the moon is just an astronomical phenomenon, a phenomenon formed by satellites orbiting along the orbit and reflecting sunlight. This world is the same. There is a full moon every month, but the difference is that only on Sundays every year, the silver moon is the most shining, and it is accompanied by the restlessness of magic. After a year, Lin En experienced this unique feeling again, but this time it was more intense. The magic in his body vibrated like boiling water, and dissipated uncontrollably to the surroundings. Lin En's expression was very calm. He closed his eyes and felt the gradually growing power in his body. After about an hour, he reached the peak, as if he had broken through some shackles. After several months of accumulation, plus the torrent of magic on Sundays, Lin En was very smoothly promoted from a second-ring wizard to a third-ring wizard, and everything was so natural. But it would not be so easy to become a great wizard next. Just like the transformation from a wizard apprentice to a formal wizard, that is another qualitative change. Chapter 212. After a very brief period of discomfort, Lin En quickly calmed down his restless magic power with his increased mental power. 071. Show my current state, Lin En muttered to himself in his mind. This was a template he asked the intelligent brain to make based on the townspeople and wizards he had seen. It could restore his state to a certain extent. Agreement target, Lin En physical activity, high magic scale, 92 mental power rating, 3-ring wizard spell slots, fireball, touch of fire, ice blade. Secondary, magic protection, high temperature steam killing, liquid nitrogen, ice field, magic barrier. Secondary, deflection field. 4th ring, deflection field, space vibration, advanced projection. Each magic scale is based on a standard magic stone and can be used to release a complete ring of magic. For someone like Pierce who has reached the level of wizard apprentice, the magic power scale is 4, while the magic power of a formal wizard is usually above 10 scales. However, the magic power used for casting is not fixed. Using pre-prepared materials or directly using alchemical tools to assist in casting will greatly reduce the magic consumption. This is why wizard apprentices can also cast spells continuously. For example, if you want to use liquid nitrogen ice field, the range covers about 3 meters around the body, and theoretically it takes 12 scales of magic power. Since the air is already filled with a lot of nitrogen, Lin En does not need to spend any magic power to mimic the elements, so the consumption is directly reduced to about 5 scales. In addition, in the overload state, most of the computing power and magic power when casting are borne by the intelligent brain, so Lin En can use it before he is promoted to a formal wizard. After all, this spell itself is modified with the first-ring magic, touch of ice, and the learning difficulty is not high. In addition to the improvement of magic power, during this period of time, while busy with the technology of internal combustion engines and gunpowder, Lin En did not fall behind in learning magic, especially the book, Visual Control and Magic Illusion, that he got from Aurora, which he almost read through. This magic book of illusion contains many magics that control vision. What interests Lin En most is the legendary magic of the 7 rings, real mirror image, and its secondary magic of the 4th ring, advanced projection. The former is simply impossible to master with his current strength and magic reserve, so his goal is to learn advanced projection. With the improvement brought by the magic network, he can barely learn and master the 4th ring magic, but it requires a lot of magic power. The method of operation of advanced projection is a bit similar to the projection method used by the faceless to go to the magic field, both of which project the magic full of their own will to another place. It's just that it is more difficult because it is directly projected into the real world, which also involves the use of light and requires the use of something as a medium. For example, Aurora, this legendary witch's control over magic can be described as arbitrary. She once set the spell on his forehead through a kiss, and then used an ordinary glass mirror as a support for the projection. It can be said that the release of the spell was completed without anyone noticing. Lin En thought about the use of this 4-ring magic, and then looked in the direction of the foggy sea. After the moon Sunday, the fleet from the outside world arrived at the port of Yaita soon. Unlike previous years, this time the lost fog on the sea was only an empty shell. This was undoubtedly the most dangerous time for the entire port city. Lin En just hoped that nothing would happen. On the 5th day after the moon Sunday, several merchant ships with red flags slowly sailed into the port of Yaita, and then dozens of boatmen carried bags of ore, precious herbs, leather and other materials down and piled them on the dock of the port. A middle-aged man in a dark blue robe and a beard walked down from the deck and greeted enthusiastically. "Long time no see, Lord Orlando." "It has been a while indeed." Orlando reached out his hand and hammered on the other's thick arm, responded with a smile, and then hurriedly introduced him to Lin En. "His name is Cody, and he is Mr. Williams' most trusted confidant." Lin En nodded. William was one of the 3 spokespersons that Helram was looking for in the outside world. His duties were similar to those of Lord, responsible for transmitting information from the outside world and transporting some scarce materials in. As for this one, Orlando looked at Cody again, and was about to say a few words of flattery, but was stopped by Lin En's hand. "Just call me Lin En, Lord Lin En." Cody greeted him very tactfully, and did not have any contempt for the other person just because he looked young. Those who could stand with Orlando were obviously also a wizard, and in short, they were not people he could offend. What goods were transported this time? Lin En glanced at the boatman who was carrying the supplies and asked. "Most of them are copper and silver mines, and there are also some monster leather and rare potion materials," Cody answered respectfully. Lin En nodded. "Although there are many mines in the wizard land, they have been dug for more than 300 years, and the difficulty of mining has become increasingly high. Therefore, copper, silver, and gold, which are the main daily currencies, are very scarce. However, from today on, I am afraid that even iron ore will become a scarce commodity, because there is simply not enough. Although the great wizard can use magic to mimic metal elements, this thing is still magic in essence and cannot be used to replace real ore. In addition, Lord William has also discovered a magical magnet this time, which can absorb iron objects out of thin air, just like magic." Cody took out a palm-sized magnet, and handed it to Lin En. From the moment Lin En interrupted Orlando, Cody keenly realized who was the one in charge. It was just that the other party's overly young face made Cody underestimate him. He couldn't help but wonder if Lin En was the child of Master Helram, who could be respected by Orlando so much. "Magnetite?" Lin En immediately became interested and reached out to take it. "Have you seen this kind of thing before?" Cody's face changed involuntarily. This novel gadget was specially prepared by him to please these wizards. He prepared 2 in total, and was about to give the other one to Master Helram. "Yes, I saw it before in the Secus Empire." Lin En nodded. "Secus Empire?" Cody became more and more curious about Lin En's identity. Lin En played with it for a while, and resisted the urge to make a compass on the spot, and continued to ask. "Cody, did your voyage go smoothly this time? How is William recently? Have the staff of the Holy See taken any action?" Chapter 213. A kingdom located on a mine. Lord William is fine, and the Holy See should not have discovered the problem with our course, but, at this point, Cody's face showed some hesitation. This year's fog seems a little strange. This was not the first time he had transported goods to Yaita. In the past, this sea area was simply a restricted area for ships. Once deep into the fog, the visibility was less than 2 meters. After sailing for a long time, sometimes you would even forget where you were. However, the situation of the ship this time was completely different. Although the fog was still there, the visibility was increased to 5 meters, and there was no such deep and terrifying feeling as before. Cody looked at Lin En. As early as when he crossed the sea, he couldn't help but have a guess in his mind. It couldn't be that there was something wrong with the wizard land. The presidents of the Magic Council have just improved this magic, and it is still in the trial stage. Your experience will serve as the basis for the subsequent improvement of this magic, Lin En explained casually, without revealing the news that the lost fog was destroyed. Even in the entire wizard land, this news is only known to the parliamentarians for the time being. The external rhetoric is that the church shamelessly sent people to sneak into the wizard land, plotted against the legendary wizard speaker phase, and created chaos in Greenreal City. This can not only fully provoke the anger of the wizards and prepare for war, but also prevent traders from secretly sailing to the sea. Cody was skeptical about Lin's words, but he still told him what he saw and heard and felt. Is the situation so serious? Lin's face remained unchanged, but he was muttering in his mind. Although he knew the inside story, he didn't expect the gap to be so big. Cody had already noticed something wrong shortly after entering the fog. This is not good news. While everyone was talking, a gorgeously decorated alchemy car drove from a distance and soon stopped next to the dock. It was the one that Dennis brought. It's just that it has been modified, and the internal power has been replaced with a more efficient hydrogen-powered internal combustion engine. Cody and several representatives of the boatmen were fortunate enough to experience the novelty and beauty of the alchemy car. How does it move without the camel pulling it? Cody was extremely reserved. He didn't know where to put his hands. He didn't even dare to touch the handrails and the body of the car. He asked in surprise. Of course, it uses alchemy and magic. Orlando laughed. In the distant sky, a huge airship flew over the city, causing the boatmen to exclaim. The changes in Yaita were so great that Cody almost doubted whether he had come to another wizard city. It was only a year since he last came to Yaita. Are these all the masterpieces of Master Helram? Cody asked hesitantly in amazement. Helram was the most powerful wizard he knew. It was rumored that he could freeze the sea and break the mountains. No, unfortunately, Master Helram died a few months ago when dealing with a civil strife, Orlando said in a heavy tone. The news of Ram's death was like a heavy hammer, knocking Cody and others dizzy. They felt a strong sense of uneasiness and asked hurriedly, "Who is in charge of Yaita now?" Orlando immediately turned to look at Lin En and said respectfully, "The one in front of you is the current leader of the Yaita school, Master Lin En." Cody looked at Lin En, who looked less than 20 years old, in astonishment, and almost suspected that Orlando was joking. Isn't this too young? He did feel that Lin En's status was not ordinary, and he only thought that he was the offspring of a great wizard or a very valued apprentice. He didn't expect that the other party would be the current controller of Yaita. Although Lord Lin is young, he has an outstanding talent for magic and is the winner of the Corona medal. The airship you just saw in the power system of this alchemy car are all invented by Lord Lin. As if he had seen Cody's thoughts, Orlando kept talking and told Cody and others about Lin's great achievements, including but not limited to shining at the magic seminar and solving the crisis of the Doomsday sect in Greenreal. Cody was confused. He didn't know what the magic seminar was, nor did he understand how glorious the Corona medal was. However, the huge airship that just passed through the sky and the alchemy car they sat on, which ran as fast as the wind, gave him a great shock. In addition, Cody was surprised to find that everyone he saw on the street was full of vitality. Even the poor people in simple clothes were no exception. This was a scene he could not see in the kingdom of Hajarata, where people only had numbness and despair in their eyes. In the past, Yaita was not so lively and noisy. Cody soon realized that the current controller of Yaita was a powerful, talented, and young wizard. Along the way, Lin En had been observing Cody's reaction. William was the spokesperson personally selected by Helram, and Cody was the other party's trusted confidant. In the past 10 years, the location of the wizard's land has not been exposed, which shows that they are still loyal, but this loyalty is aimed at Helram. Lin En is not sure whether the other party will have any tricks now that the leader has changed, so he specially asked someone to drive the alchemy car as the facade of Yaita, and took Cody around the port city, just to let the other party see that the Yaita school is still strong under his leadership. However, Lin En did not intend to expose gunpowder and some more critical technologies. After a circle, he took him to the dean's office and questioned him. Hajarata is one of the tributary kingdoms under the rule of the Sekaz Empire. It is located in the border area of the empire and is known as the kingdom located on the mine. Hajarata has extremely rich mineral resources and a population of nearly 2 million. Nearly a quarter of the country's population are miners, or mining slaves. It is precisely because of the miners working day and night in the dark and dangerous mines that the nobles of the territory can continuously transport ore to the capital of the empire, Vicknell, through cargo ships and earn a lot of income. William's main business is the ore trade industry. He has his own fleet, so he can naturally make some cargo ships that go out to sea for trade suddenly change their course to the land of wizards without anyone noticing. P.S. Please subscribe and support me for the third update. Chapter 214 Cody, you must be the greatest wizard, a kingdom located on a mine? Lin En immediately became interested, because the most lacking thing in the Yaita harbor now is all kinds of ores. Who is the one who controls the kingdom of Hajarata now? Lin En asked. It's the old King Basil Hajarata III. Cody began to talk. According to the intelligence they collected, King Basil seems to be in poor health recently, and he is old, so he is estimated to not last long, and for some reason, the old king has not established the heir to the throne. The two princes with the highest voices are tit for tat, stirring up the whole kingdom. So, a war of succession to the throne may break out at any time in the kingdom? Lin En asked thoughtfully. No, that's not necessarily the case. It depends on the statement of the cardinal, Cody said cautiously. There are even rumors in the kingdom that it is because the cardinal is very dissatisfied with the old king's choice that he has been dragging it on. Lin En nodded, and then asked some questions about the current situation of the fleet formed by William, and then waved his hand to let Cody and others take them down to rest. Orlando spoke only after Cody and the others left. Dean Lin, are you very interested in this Hajarata kingdom? Lin asked with a smile. What do you think Yaita lacks the most now? It should be time. Orlando hesitated for a while and responded. The port city is developing very fast now. Yes, but it still lacks ore and labor. These are what the Hajarata kingdom has, Lin explained. In addition, Cody and others' ship experience has shown that the current fog sea has more flaws than he imagined. More than 2 months ago, when he just returned to Yaita, he sent people to confirm it. At that time, the fog on the sea was only slightly weakened, and the visibility increased from 2 meters to 3 meters. Lin thought that Vittorio had remedied it in time. Now it seems that the legendary magic power that was lifted has not completely disappeared. The magic power that originally existed in the white fog is gradually dissipating. In the future, it may evolve to the point where it can be detected by the naked eye from a distance. Lin En didn't intend to just wait for the Vatican to come to the door, because if that happened, the first to suffer would be the Aida harbor, because this is the gateway to the land of wizards. This geographical location has great convenience when it was safe in the past. But once a war breaks out, it will easily become a target of concentrated fire. The best solution is naturally to move the battlefield to other places, such as the kingdom of Hadrata. This place not only has the resources they need, but also the possible war of succession within the kingdom. The dispute between the Vatican and the king are all good breakthroughs. More importantly, there are a large number of oppressed people there, which means there are a large number of people who can be united. So, you plan to interfere in this war of succession and support someone who is willing to support wizards to become king? Orlando asked in surprise. He thought this might not be an easy thing. Lin En didn't shake his head or nod. This might also be a good opportunity to intervene, but the specific way to do it still needs to really understand the current situation of the country before making a decision. Of course, it also needs to be discussed by the parliament. By the way, aren't Master Dennis and his team studying the improvement of airships recently? How is it going? Lin En suddenly remembered this and asked. He was planning to change a method of transporting goods to improve efficiency, so he asked Dennis and others to focus on the modification of the airship. It should be completed in 2 days. The airship looks bigger than a dragon and fills the entire alchemy workshop. Orlando recalled with emotion that it looked like an air fortress. Cody spent 2 very leisurely days in the port city and saw the novelty and prosperity of the city, especially paper and glass. Cody had a premonition of the great value of these commodities when he saw them for the first time. He had no doubt that the nobles would go crazy for it. This bright and transparent glass is simply a kind of jade that can be artificially made, and it also represents a steady stream of wealth. The boatmen were particularly tempted by the work in the Aida port, which was paid 8 to 15 silver coins a month. They risked their lives to sail the ship, and could only receive 3 or 4 silver coins as salary every month. In the harbor city, even the poor and miners of the lowest status can eat delicious white bread, which makes the fire of jealousy in their hearts burn. The next evening, Cody was summoned by the dean again, and Lin En said something that surprised him. In the future, the trade route from Hadrata to Yaita will be changed from once a year to once a month, or even once every half a month. But, Dean, there are often storms and whirlpools in this foggy sea, and it is only relatively safe on Sundays. Cody reminded carefully, and he doubted whether the new city lord had forgotten this. You can rest assured about this. I am not asking you to come by boat, Lin En said with a smile. No boat? How can we cross the foggy sea? Cody was confused. Can't we fly? After following Lin En and others to the alchemy workshop, Cody realized that they really flew. What appeared in front of him was a huge ship that was 100 meters long. It was blue-green and covered with rune patterns, which looked mysterious. This is the latest airship. It can carry 10 tons of cargo and fly stably at an altitude of more than 4,000 meters. The speed can reach 70 to 120 kilometers per hour. Every time Lin En said a word, the astonishment on Cody and others' faces increased. They felt that their brains were not enough. What does it mean to fly at an altitude of 4,000 meters, at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour, and carry 10 tons of cargo? This means that they can load all kinds of goods and reach the capital of Hadrota from this seaport city in just one day, avoiding the whirlpool and the storm on the sea, and complete a trade. This is simply crazy, you know. In the past, the whole process required them to transport it by carriage on the road, and then sail by ship, which usually took more than half a month. But now it only takes one day. Cody looked at Lin En, his face full of deep respect, and couldn't help but speak. You must be the greatest wizard. Chapter 215 Invisible Hydrogen-Powered Strategic Bombing Airship! Facing Cody's flattery, Lin En was not moved at all and shook his head. I can't bear such a title. In the wizard land, there are many wizards who are stronger and greater than me. Don't say that, Lord Lin En. In the entire history of magic, your contribution is also rare. Orlando hurriedly flattered him. Lin En smiled and did not reply. Compared with people like him who cheated by relying on scientific knowledge in their previous lives, the founders of magic theories were truly great. They were the ones who really started from scratch and explored and expanded the entire magic world. I have another question, Cody said hesitantly. This airship is so big. How can it avoid the investigation of the church? If it flies in the sky, it will be fine. It's just a small dot. Once it lands, it will become very conspicuous and can't be hidden. We have considered this a long time ago. Philip suddenly laughed and gestured. A wizard in charge of controlling the airship immediately activated the polarization magic. Under the gaze of the crowd, the huge airship that was 100 meters long in front of them slowly became illusory and soon disappeared in front of them. Looking at the expressions of astonishment and disbelief on Cody and the boatmen's faces, Dennis and others, as the modification and designer of this airship, were full of smug looks on their faces. In order to increase the data to the limit, they spent a lot of effort. In particular, the invisible function racked their brains. It is not an easy task to hide an entire airship. Ordinary polarized magic cannot do it at all. In order to enhance the power of magic, they smeared the juice of invisible beasts on the surface of the airship. This kind of magic beast has a strange ability, that is, the skin can change color according to the external situation, perfectly blending into the surrounding environment, hiding in the dark to attack prey. However, the size of the airship is not small. They bought most of the invisible beast juice on the market to make enough for one airship. I named it Invisible Air and Space Fortress, Dennis said with great satisfaction. Invisible Hydrogen-Powered Strategic Bombing Airship? A series of terms flashed through Lin En's mind. He had heard that Dennis had found a solution to the problem that the airship was large and easy to be discovered. He didn't expect the solution to be so direct. As long as it can't be seen, it won't be exposed. I can only say, worthy of being an alchemist master. Lin En sighed secretly, and then asked someone to bring the goods for this trade. The most important thing is naturally glassware. After checking it out, Cody immediately found that most of these glassware had cavitations, which was very annoying, and was completely different from the finished products he saw on the market in Yaiata. Dean, aren't these all defective products? Cody asked in confusion. There must be these defective products to reflect the value of the finished product, right? Lin En said with a smile. Because the workers in the glass workshop are all novices, they always make a lot of defective products every time they cast. And it is also a bit troublesome to melt and recast. It's just that there are some cavitations inside, not that they can't be used. So Lin En simply decided to divide these glass products into different levels, low, medium and high. For example, a set of glassware with cavitation can be sold for 7 silver coins, and those without cavitation can be sold for 10 times the price. This way, You can make money from all walks of life, sell at a high price, and satisfy the feeling of superiority of some nobles. It's simply a win-win situation. You can also exchange a small amount of goods for a large amount of coins, and then exchange these coins for ore and transport them to the port of Yaida, forming a virtuous circle. The wizards present were shocked by Lin's overly advanced economic concept. It was also the first time that Cody knew that there was such a routine as deliberately selling defective products. However, only monopoly things like glass products can be done this way. By the way, the cabin of the airship can only carry 25 people at a time, and it also needs people to drive the airship and be responsible for subsequent maintenance. Before tomorrow, you can select 15 representatives to transport this batch of goods. Lin reminded, there are only 15 places. Cody immediately became a little hesitant. In order to transport this batch of goods, they came with a full 150 people. Who to stay and who to go back is a question worth pondering. Lin En patted Cody's shoulder and asked him to think slowly and get familiar with the airship. He returned to the dean's office and called Loud over. Lord Lin En. Loud, who was summoned by Lin En again after nearly 4 months, immediately gave Lin En a great salute, and he was still prostrating himself, shouting excitedly, "What are you doing?" Lin En helped Loud out and asked with a smile. Loud immediately cried. Since Lin En went to the Wizard City Greenrail 4 months ago, he seemed to have forgotten them. He waited and waited but could not get any news. After waiting for Lin En to come back, he became a magic star that everyone was paying attention to, and the actual controller of the Yaita school. Loud was so excited that he could not help himself. He had undoubtedly made the right bet again, but just when he was fantasizing about soaring into the sky, he was still not summoned by Lin En. He sent people to inquire about the situation again and again, but got the response that the city lord was very busy. This made Loud wonder if he had lost his value and was abandoned. The patience of the laborers who followed him before had been exhausted after several months of waiting. Most of them had already entered the workshop or went mining. There was no way. The people were scattered and it was difficult to lead the team. If he hadn't had a little fantasy in his heart, Loud would have considered whether to learn textile technology. He heard that the work in the textile workshop was relatively easy and well paid. Listening to Loud's crying, Lin En was a little embarrassed for a while. During this period, he was busy dealing with various affairs and had to find time to learn magic. But of course, he couldn't say that. Lin En coughed twice, interrupted Loud's crying, and said with a sigh, "In recent months, I have been planning a very important thing. I wanted to let you do it, but it was really dangerous, so I have been hesitating whether to summon you." "Lord Lin En, what is it?" Loud immediately stood up and asked nervously. Even the dean felt it was dangerous, so he didn't agree to it. "I need you to do 2 things. First, go to the kingdom of Hadrada to collect some intelligence. Second, monitor William and find out if he has any bad ideas. If so, replace him for me," Lin En said solemnly. Chapter 216 Lydia. "We have already made the musket." "I understand, Lord Lin," Lord said with a serious face. Although both of these things are very tricky, he knows better that only by showing enough value can he regain trust, power and attention. But Lord changed his expression the next second after patting his chest to make a promise, and looked at Lin eagerly. "William has been operating in the kingdom of Hadrada for many years and his power is stable. With the current finances and manpower of Ship Gang, it may be difficult to infiltrate in a short time," Lord said carefully, and the meaning was very simple, that is, people and money are needed, but even if someone has money, it is not an easy thing to do this. "You don't need to worry about these, I have planned it for you," Lin said with a smile. He didn't know how powerful William was, but one thing was certain. These 150 people who came to the wizard's land were all his confidants, so they were sent to carry out such a secret mission. So Lin left most of the people in Yaita on the grounds that the number of people that could take the airship at one time was limited, and sent them back in batches when transporting goods in the future. During this time, he could mix some sand in the crowd of more than 100 people, and through the temptation of benefits or even magic, Make some of them become his spies and monitor William. They will also inevitably learn a lot of information about William and the kingdom of Hadrada. Under Lin's constant narration, Loud shuddered inexplicably, and couldn't help but recall the boy who easily caught him from his hiding place in the Sekha's empire and killed the archbishop and thousands of elite guards by himself. It was also at that time that Loud's mind had a thought that he must not go against the other party. It was too insidious and too terrible. Also, take this thing with you. Lin took off the ring of mysticism on his index finger and handed it to Loud. Loud took it with a confused look on his face. He could see that it was a magic item, but he didn't know what it did. You can use it to command the wizards I sent over. It is also blessed with a protective magic that can protect your safety at critical moments. Lin explained. That magic was naturally the fourth ring magic that he had just mastered, advanced projection. In other words, with the help of this ring, he could keep abreast of the dynamics of the other side, and when necessary, he could directly appear as an incarnation of consciousness. Since the medium of the magic was the ring of mystic magic, he could also mobilize the magic power of the magic network to a certain extent and maximize his original strength. Of course, it was okay to deal with some bishops or formal wizards, but it would be difficult to compete with a cardinal. An incarnation cannot connect mentally through the magic network. Loud put the ring on his hand very solemnly and said decisively, "Lord Lin En, please rest assured, I will complete the tasks you have assigned as soon as possible. Since the other party has made arrangements, there is nothing to worry about." After handing Loud 500 imperial gold coins found in the gold exchange as reserve funds, Lin En waved his hand, indicating that the other party should quickly gather people and set off tomorrow. Loud said goodbye very respectfully and left, while Lin En took out the map he got from Cody and started to look at it. The kingdom of Hadrada is located on the border of the Sekha's empire, surrounded by mountains and the sea. The straight line distance from the Iida seaport is only 1,500 kilometers, which means that if the airship is not loaded with heavy objects, it can reach the destination in half a day if it is running at full speed. The distance for ships is not far, about 10 days. Because of this, Lin En is very concerned about William. After all, this is a very critical moment. Once the other party has an inappropriate mind because of Helrim's death and chooses to surrender to the Holy See, they are unprepared, and the consequences are disastrous. So it is better to prepare early. But as an easygoing person, Lin En still gave the other party a chance. He deliberately let Cody stay in the Iida seaport for a few days to show his strength, and then gave him the trade of glass products as a benefit, just to let the other party know that if he continues to follow him, the benefits he will get will be no less than before. If William still doesn't know the current situation after this set of combined punches and wants to do something secretly, then he can only replace the other party. The next morning, in the alchemy workshop of the Iida school, Lin, Philip, Dennis and others watched the huge airship take off. This spectacular scene soon attracted the attention of passers-by. They had seen airships before, but they were too big. "Master Dennis, how is it? Are you used to staying in Iida during this period?" Lin turned his head and looked at Dennis on the side and asked. Very good, very good." Master Dennis nodded with great satisfaction. In the first few days, he was still a little uncomfortable, but he was soon attracted by the drawings given by Lin, and devoted himself to the research. In particular, the idea of the magic train and the armored warship fascinated him. "That's good." Lin smiled, and then his expression became more serious, and asked Orlando, "Has the cargo ship from Venel not arrived yet? It has been half a month since the day of the moon, right?" "According to the usual situation, it should have arrived a long time ago." Orlando was also a little confused, but he quickly comforted her. "This happened a few years ago. Venel is the capital of the Sekha's empire after all. It is not easy to smuggle goods. It is possible that the Holy See or the Empire has been very strict recently, so they temporarily gave up the shipping." "Is there any way to contact him?" Lin En asked again. Orlando shook his head hesitantly. "In the past, Master Helrim might have a way to contact the other party, but he did not tell them this method." Although Lin En was a little worried, he had to give up. Venel is not like Hadrada. It is the place where the Holy See has the strongest power besides the Holy City. It must be planned carefully. Sending people to investigate that may have the opposite effect. With this worry, Lin En returned to the magic workshop and immediately received good news. Dean Lin En, we have already made the kind of musket you mentioned. Lydia almost jumped out, holding a musket that was taller than her, with a strange shape and intricate patterns engraved on the surface, and handed it to Lin En. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217, Technological Guns and Magic Bullets. Not bad, it's pretty fast. Lin En rubbed Lydia's head to show encouragement, and then reached out to take the beautifully crafted musket and looked at it carefully. What he asked Lydia and others to study and make was naturally the flintlock. Compared with the early muskets and matchlocks, the flintlock has the advantages of fast firing rate, lightweight, small caliber, short gun body and small recoil, and reduces the situation where it cannot be fired due to rain and moisture. It is already a very complete musket. Since it was invented by a watchmaker in the early 16th century, it has been popular and was gradually replaced in the 19th century. As for the more advanced percussion gun, although it is not impossible to make it, the ammunition of that thing needs to be filled with primers. With the current level of magic industry in Yaida, it is not suitable for large-scale production. The flintlock only needs lead bullets to fire, and the cost is also very low. Dean Lin En, what is this? Some kind of new alchemical equipment? Dennis asked in surprise. He did not feel any trace of magic on it. No, this is a technological creation, and it has not been modified by magic, Lin En said with some expectation. Let's go. Let's try its power. Under Lin En's leadership, the group soon arrived at the training ground. The rows of wooden dummies used for magic training in front of them were the best targets. I'll do it. I'll do it, Lydia said excitedly. After making this musket, she had experimented with it several times and was very proficient. Moreover, this musket was also special. It was one size smaller than the one marked on the drawing, so that halflings like her could also use it. Lin En shook his head, handed the musket to the guard on duty, and asked, have you ever shot an arrow before, Dean? The guard was both excited and terrified. He was so excited that he couldn't speak completely, but he still stammered and said that he could accurately hit the target within 100 meters. Then you try it. The way to operate it is very simple. Lin En smiled and demonstrated it to him, almost teaching him step by step. It is not difficult to use a flintlock rifle. As long as a person with normal IQ puts in some effort to learn, he can quickly master it and load, aim and fire. Because he was too nervous, the guard had to learn for more than an hour before he could barely master the method of use. Then he began to operate it with great effort, using a wooden hammer to press the bullet into the barrel, raised the gun and aimed at the wooden dummy not far ahead. Everyone present stared at the musket in the guard's hand with great interest, and at the same time they were a little surprised while Lin En asked someone who had never been in contact with it to demonstrate it. Dennis and others looked thoughtful. Be careful of the recoil, Lin En reminded him. The guard was stunned for a moment, and then became more nervous. What is this recoil? But he soon realized that at the moment he pulled the trigger, a huge thrust emerged from the barrel, almost knocking him over. Bang! At the same time, a fierce roar like thunder sounded in the training ground, accompanied by a puff of smoke coming out of the musket, and the bullets loaded inside flew away at a very fast speed. Although it deviated slightly due to not adapting to the recoil, it still hit the target accurately. The upper part of the wooden dummy was blown open with a big hole almost the next moment after the gunshot sounded. So fast, Dennis couldn't help but say. With his outstanding eyesight and mental reaction ability, he could clearly see the bullets shot out of the barrel and hit the target 40 meters away almost instantly. The power was also particularly amazing. You know, the materials of these targets are special, not ordinary wood materials, but they were still penetrated so easily. The guard was stunned in place, and couldn't believe that he made this. Kevin and others were vaguely worried whether such weapons would pose a threat to wizards. After all, an ordinary person who doesn't know magic can master it after an hour of learning. which makes them a little worried. Thinking of this, Kevin volunteered to stand up and cast a second-level spell, Mage Shield, on himself, intending to be a target and personally test the power of the musket. "Sir Kevin," the guard looked at Kevin, who was fighting in front of him, holding the musket in his hand. His legs were shaking, and he didn't dare to shoot at all. "Don't talk nonsense, try it quickly, the weapon in your hand can't hurt me," Kevin said impatiently, standing 50 meters away. Under the constant urging of everyone, the guard swallowed hard, hesitated for more than 10 seconds, and didn't move. In the end, Lydia grabbed the musket. "Let me do it." Lydia cleaned the gun chamber very skillfully, and then took out a special bullet from her pocket with a malicious heart and asked, "Professor Kevin, can I try this bullet?" "Of course." Kevin nodded casually. After receiving a positive answer, Lydia happily stuffed the special bullet into the gun chamber. Before shooting, she paused and reminded him embarrassedly, "You'd better be careful, Professor Kevin." Kevin waved his hand impatiently. Lydia took a deep breath, pulled the flint clip, and then began to aim. About 3 seconds later, she pulled the trigger at Kevin. Bang! The sound of thunder rang out again. Although he didn't care, Kevin's eyes had already turned into eagle eyes like a griffin. That was the shaping magic, dynamic vision. When he really faced the muzzle, he felt how fast the bullet was. At the moment the gun sounded, the attack had already arrived in front of him. A distance of 50 meters was crossed in just 0.2 seconds. The lead bullet, with an initial velocity of 250 meters per second, soon hit the Mage Shield. A crack soon appeared on the shield, but Kevin was relieved because the bullet quickly disintegrated. However, being so close, Kevin soon noticed the runes engraved on the surface of the projectile. This was explosion. Kevin's attainments in alchemy were limited, but he still recognized it at a glance. It was the explosion rune. Then, the special projectile exploded directly, and the disintegrated fragments flew everywhere, turning into a denser rain of bullets, hitting the Mage Shield. In less than 0.5 seconds, the solid magic barrier was instantly pierced. Chapter 218 Magic Industrialization. The sudden explosion of the projectile was obviously beyond Kevin's expectation. Even though he could clearly see the rain of bullets flying at him with his excellent dynamic vision, he had no time to react at such a close distance. Kevin could only watch the flying projectile fragments hit him. He was frightened and stepped back repeatedly, but soon found that his body was only slightly painful, and there were no more holes, and even his skin was not broken. If Lydia had put in a special iron ball just now, you would be seriously injured now. Philip looked at Kevin, who was scared to death, with a smile, and was not surprised by this result, because this explosive projectile was made by him. The power had been tested long ago. The power was about the same as the second ring spell, Exploding Fireball, which could barely break the Mage Shield. The remaining kinetic energy was not enough to hurt the human body, so when Lydia took out this thing just now, he did not say anything to stop her. Seeing that everyone on the field was laughing, Kevin couldn't help but glare at Lydia. The halfling girl stuck out her tongue and hid behind Lin En. She had just seen Professor Kevin talk about the power of the musket so badly, so she wanted to demonstrate it to him. After all, this musket was made by her own hands and was the product she was most proud of. Lin En on the side also said with a smile, "Professor Kevin, Lydia has already reminded you before. If you had been more careful, you wouldn't have gotten so embarrassed." Although the power of the musket is good, a three-ring wizard can't be a deterrent if he is serious. It's mainly because Kevin underestimated the enemy. Of course, Lydia was too much. Although he could guess that Lydia had tested the power of the projectile, the attack that could break the Mage Shield was still very dangerous, so he picked up the musket and knocked the halfling girl's head with the butt of the gun a few times as a warning. Lydia covered her head in pain, looking pitiful. "By the way, how did it feel to face the musket just now, Professor Kevin?" Lin En asked curiously. "It's amazing. An ordinary person who doesn't know magic can master it in just 1 hour and gain the power to threaten a formal wizard." Kevin's expression became very solemn. If the threat from the church was not imminent, he would have advised Lin En to list the musket and the method of making it as top secret, or even destroy it. Because before this, there was an insurmountable gap between wizards who mastered magic and civilians. especially after becoming a second-ring wizard. They could learn the all-round protective magic of Mage Shield. Without the blessing of extraordinary power, even if the opponent held a bow and crossbow or a giant sword, it would be difficult to break the wizard's defense. While their magic could easily kill the enemy, the appearance of the musket broke this convention, allowing a civilian who didn't know magic to initially have the ability to threaten wizards. However, Kevin saw the disadvantages at a glance, mainly because the loading was too slow and the concealment was too poor. The sound of the musket firing could probably be heard from hundreds of meters away. Moreover, the special projectiles made without the use of rune magic would require at least 2 or 3 shots to break the Mage Shield. Kevin told his feelings very seriously. Lin En also nodded. He was naturally well aware of the advantages and disadvantages of the flintlock, but he was a little surprised by the explosive projectile developed by Philip and others. It seems that magical transformation of the musket may also be a good route. Since there is an explosion, there may not be freezing, lightning and other bullets. What is the cost of this musket? How long does it take to make it? Raphael asked hurriedly. During the days he stayed in the port of Yaida, he had just finished the evaluation of the internal combustion engine and submitted a report to the parliament. Unexpectedly, Lin En gave him a new surprise. He saw the demonstration very clearly. This kind of thing called a musket is not only powerful enough to break armor, but also very easy to use. It is easy to form combat effectiveness, which can effectively make up for the dilemma of insufficient low-end combat effectiveness in the wizard land. This is also a problem that the parliament has been worried about. According to the deduction of some great wizards, when a large-scale battle is really fought, the church may first send a large number of low-quality serfs to strengthen their will with divine arts, charge in groups, and consume the magic power of wizards. The elite composed of clergy, divine punishment army, and griffin knights will be able to wait for the opportunity to fight and decide the outcome in one battle. There is no so-called army in the wizard land, only some security teams responsible for maintaining order. Although they have started recruiting and training again, they do not have much hope for this, because the temporarily recruited army has no combat experience at all. It would be good if it does not collapse in a real battle, so much so that some people suggested whether to let those wizard apprentices go to the battlefield. They don't have much magic, but they can still deal with those serfs. However, this was quickly refuted. Although these apprentices no longer have much potential, they have been trained with great effort. It is a pity to use them as cannon fodder. Now the muskets appear at a very timely time, which means that they can pull up a team capable of fighting in a short time, and they can also be used to deal with those low-level clergy if they are not prepared. It took us about 10 days to make this musket according to the drawings, Philip said thoughtfully. The biggest difficulty in making a flintlock is the seamless barrel. I solved it with magic, but it is not so easy for those craftsmen. It is impossible to develop a corresponding alchemical array specifically for this barrel, right? This can be solved with an internal combustion engine, and then a hole can be made in a solid steel pipe, Lin En said, and then made a rough estimate and spoke again. For a workshop of 1,500 people, it shouldn't be a problem to produce 500 muskets a month. How is that possible? Philip was a little unbelievable. Doesn't that mean that on average 3 people can make 1 musket a month? Of course it's possible, as long as there is division of labor and standardized processes. Nothing is impossible, Lin En said firmly. Nowadays, both the Seka's empire and the craftsmen in the wizard land still follow the traditional manufacturing method, that is, one craftsman makes a certain item alone. Compared with the modern division of labor method, the efficiency is much lower. Chapter 219. You actually plan to use our magic treasure to plow the land? Division of labor, standardized process? The 2 terms mentioned by Lin En made Raphael and others frown. They could barely understand what the other party wanted to express, but they couldn't figure out why 3 people could make a musket within a month. Without magic, it would take more time to polish and make the buttstock and barrel. Lydia, if I ask you to teach an ordinary craftsman all the techniques to make a musket, how long will it take? Lin En asked. Maybe 7 or 8 days. No, at least half a month, Lydia said hesitantly. If you want to teach the other party, You have to make it once and familiarize yourself with the process. Even so, the other party may not be able to learn it quickly and make it independently. After all, not everyone can look at the drawings like her and reproduce it the first time. Thinking of this, Lydia puffed up her chest proudly. What if I only need him to learn to make a flint or a trigger? Lin En asked with a smile. 2 or 3 hours at most. Lydia hesitated. These 2 things are not difficult to make. Even the dumbest craftsman should be able to learn it in 3 hours. Then why don't we just separate the parts of the musket, find a group of people to make the barrel, a group of people to make the buttstock, and another group of people to make the parts, and finally put them together? Isn't this simple and easy? As Lydia said just now, it takes at least half a month to teach a person to make a whole musket, but it only takes a few hours for them to learn how to make one of the parts, which greatly reduces the difficulty of training a qualified craftsman. This is also the concept of modern industry, dividing the work into several steps, and having a group of people complete one of the steps alone. The more detailed the division of labor, the higher the level of specialization. Using this method, a group of skilled workers can be trained in a very short time, because they only have to do one thing every day, and practice makes perfect. Is it possible? Lydia was stunned, always feeling that something was wrong, but couldn't say it. Wait, Dean Lin En, if the production process is separated, what if the things made can't be spliced together? Philip couldn't help but ask. You have to know that there are thousands of craftsmen. If they are asked to make different things, wouldn't it be a mess? For example, one person makes a bigger gun barrel, and the other person makes a smaller flint spring. Don't underestimate such a small difference. Even if you force them together on a musket, there is still a risk of explosion. That's why we need to standardize and establish relevant standards. Lin En said again. For example, for a gun barrel, we specify its length and diameter, and then determine the tolerance. Only those that meet this standard are finished products. In this way, anyone who makes a gun barrel can install it on a musket, and the same applies to other parts. Although it is a bit troublesome at the beginning, the benefits are obvious afterwards. Even if a part of the musket is broken, you can directly find a material to replace it. Each worker will only know the process he made, so as to avoid the spread of the production method. After Lin En's explanation, Philip and others suddenly felt bright in front of them, and soon understood the advantages of division of labor and establishment of relevant standards, and thought about whether such a method can be extended to other places, such as for the production of some alchemical items. Orlando, let Magic Daily publish 2 pieces of news tomorrow. First, Yaita is going to build a flintlock workshop and recruit 1,500 workers. Second, I am going to build a musket team, and the goal is to set 3,000 people. Lin En returned the musket in his hand to Lydia and said to Orlando beside him, since the flintlock has been successfully built, it is time to consider building the first musket team. But, Lord Lin En, this will require the recruitment of another 4,500 people. What about farming and fishing this year? Orlando said hesitantly. Together with the glass, paper and textile workshops before, this is already more than 10,000 people. The entire Yaita harbor has only more than 50,000 people, which means that 1/5 of the people will be separated from the original production tasks. Not to mention that this is just a preliminary plan. According to this trend, Orlando has no doubt that in a few months, everyone in the city will work for the city lord. So you have to work harder during this period. Use internal combustion engine technology to research several alchemical instruments that can automatically cultivate, sow and harvest. In this way, even if most people leave the land, it will not affect the output of grain. Lin En said confidently. He had planned this long ago. Orlando was dumbfounded. Philip and others also looked at Lin En with strange expressions. The alchemical internal combustion engine is a magical treasure, but you actually used it to cultivate the land? And if there is an alchemical instrument that can automatically cultivate, sow and harvest, what do the poor need to do? This is probably a dream. In the evening, in a village not far from the capital of Hadrata, an invisible airship landed silently in a manor. This is one of the bases set up by William outside the capital to facilitate the storage and transportation of goods. After settling Loud and others and telling them not to run around, Cody took only a few confidants and rode a carriage into the city alone, and was soon received. William, who looked short and fat, was sitting on a large chair in the secret room. His face was distorted with fat and his eyes were squinted. "What happened, Cody? You'd better not tell me that there was something wrong with this year's trade." William knew the time of leaving and returning to the port. Normally, it would take at least 40 days to complete a sea trade. Now Cody came back only half a month later, which made him have some bad guesses. Reporting to the Lord, "This year's trade is very smooth. We brought a batch of new goods from Yaida, which is something called glass and paper," Cody said excitedly, and then hurriedly added as if he remembered something. "By the way, my lord, the one who is now in charge of Yaita Harbor is a very young wizard. It is said that Master Helrim has unfortunately died while dealing with a civil unrest." "What did you say? Helrim is dead?" William's expression changed, and he stood up directly from his seat. The fat around his body shook continuously, bringing an indescribable sense of oppression. Chapter 220. Is it possible that the Magic Council can't send any other personnel? Under the pressure of William's momentum, Cody was frightened and shuddered. He didn't expect that the adults would be so excited. "Are you sure this news is true and reliable?" William asked again. Cody nodded hurriedly. During the days he stayed in the port city, he asked many people to inquire about the news. A few months ago, a tragedy occurred in Yaida, with thousands of casualties. Helrim also died in that incident. It was said that it was related to a guy called the Evil Wizard. Listening to Cody's narration, William supported his fat body and paced in the secret room. After a while, he opened his mouth and tentatively uttered a few words. Seeing no response, he confirmed the news of Helrim's death. William's expression changed again and again, and finally he sat back in his seat. His expression returned to calm. "Tell me, who is the person in charge of Yaita now?" "It is a wizard named Lin, who is not very old, and looks like he is probably less than 20 years old," Cody replied hesitantly. "That means that now a little kid is in charge of Yaita. Can't the Magic Council send any other people?" William sneered. "Lord William, I think Mr. Lin En is not that simple. It is said that he is also from the Sekis Empire. It has only been a year since he crossed the sea to the land of wizards, but he has shown many tricks." Cody reminded carefully, and told him everything he saw and heard during the trip. "A spaceship that is hundreds of meters long and bigger than a house, a four-wheeled vehicle that runs faster than the wind, an alchemical machine that can automatically weave cloth." William's brows couldn't help but frown, because what Cody said was so fantastic that he began to doubt whether his trusted subordinates were under some kind of illusion magic. But Cody quickly gave evidence. "Now the spaceship is docked in a manor outside the capital. It is with this thing that they can cross the two places in one day." In addition, he also brought samples of paper and glass, which he quickly had presented, and he also told the situation of other people stranded in Yaita. "So now our people are stranded in Yaita and become hostages?" William's tone seemed a little depressed. After glancing at the samples presented, he paused for a moment, and immediately fell in love with an exquisitely crafted glass goblet. He reached out and picked it up and looked at it in front of his eyes. The cup body was crystal clear, shining under the candlelight, and it looked very dazzling. William looked at it for a long time before putting the goblet down, and then looked at the other glassware and pure white paper pages. Of course, he saw the value of these two things. "I think Mr. Lin En should not mean to stop them from coming back, but the airship has a limited carrying capacity, so they need to come back in batches," Cody explained. Because they had missed the return date due to the few days they were stranded in Yaida, and now the foggy sea has become dangerous again, so they can only rely on airships to travel. William, however, did not believe this so-called coincidence. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "It seems that the successor of Master Hiranram does have some tricks. Even you have begun to excuse him." "Sir William, I never meant that," Cody said with trepidation. William naturally knew that Cody would not betray him. After a little persuasion, he continued to ask, "What about the division of interests? Has the other party redetermined it?" Mr. Lin En said that the previous agreement remains the same, and it is still a 30% to 70% split. Cody said hurriedly, "Humphrey." William snorted in dissatisfaction. "Although these glass products can earn a lot of money, They are things that have never appeared before. Once they are taken out, they will inevitably attract the interest of many people, which means that he needs to spend energy and money to open up relationships. Next time when we transport the goods, remember to tell that person for me that the Holy See has been investigating very strictly recently. I need to bear more risks and the division must be changed. I think half and half is very suitable, William ordered coldly. Since he no longer had to be controlled by others, William could no longer tolerate himself being a puppet, taking huge risks but having to give up most of the benefits. After more than 10 years of hard work, he is now a veritable viscount with his own territory. He is no longer the miner who needs to look at other people's eyes and be ordered around. Cody hesitated. In his opinion, Lord Lin was not a good person to talk to, but he did not have the courage to reject William's proposal. After asking for a while, William waved Cody away, opened the oak barrel next to the seat, and put the blood-like liquid inside into a high-heeled glass. With a gentle shake, a pungent smell of blood immediately floated away. William drank it all without caring, intoxicated by the trembling and pleasure of his body, with thoughts running through his mind. Suddenly, he thought of what Cody said before, that when he crossed the foggy sea, he found that the fog on the sea seemed to have some new changes, combined with the fact that the new IATA controller had detained his cargo ships in the Wizard Land and used airships to transport goods instead, and even took back the compass that could locate the Wizard Land. He couldn't help but suspect that this matter might not be that simple. William pondered for a while, called a servant, and whispered, "Send me another ship to the foggy sea to take a look." A week passed in a flash. Recently, the kingdom of Hadra has been turbulent, and the dispute between the two princes has almost become known to everyone. Just 2 days ago on the king's birthday, the eldest prince presented a smooth and flawless round mirror that could clearly reflect a person's figure, a set of crystal-clear tableware and wine glasses, which attracted the attention of a group of nobles and priests, and won the praise of the king and queen. It is said that the material of this round mirror is a very rare mineral from overseas. It was made by the best craftsmen in Hadrata. It is expensive and there are very few perfect finished products. There are only 2 in the world. The other one was given to Cardinal Lozak. Although this magical round mirror is gone, related glass products soon appeared on the market, attracting nobles, wealthy businessmen and priests. It became a new fashion in a very short time. Due to the limited quantity, the price was more than 10 times higher. A finished high-footed cup can even be sold for 10 kingdom gold coins. Even if it is a defective product, it can be sold for 2 or 3 gold coins. Even so, it is still in short supply and sold out in just 2 days. Chapter 221 The spirit and faith belong to God, and the secular world and the flesh belong to the king. Hadra in the capital, in a luxurious council hall, the handsome second prince, after listening to his subordinate's report, suddenly angrily swept all the flower pots and oak wine glasses on the table to the ground, and cursed in anger, "Damn, damn, damn Harold, damn William." All the servants present lowered their heads in fear, not daring to answer at all. Only an old man with white hair and beard remained calm, looking at the wine glass in his hand, waiting for the prince's anger to be vented, and then spoke indifferently. "Don't worry so much, Hatra, things are not as bad as you think." But, Master Anthony, Harold won the favor of almost all the nobles at that banquet, of course, and my good father King Basil. At this point, Hatra's face twisted. In order to outdo his brother Harold at the birthday party, he had gone to great lengths to find a very rare crystal stone and asked a master carver to carve his father's most glorious achievements in conquering the enemy country into a vivid character picture. However, just when he thought he could shine at the banquet, the damned Harold actually presented a rare treasure called a glass mirror, which attracted everyone's attention almost instantly. So much so that throughout the banquet, he was like a funny clown, left aside and no one cared about him. How could he not feel humiliated? Hatel, you need to remember what those who support you are for. They will not betray their own interests because of a so-called rare treasure. Anthony said, gently placing the glass in his hand on the table. As for your father, King Basil, I think Harold's offering of that round mirror will only have a counterproductive effect. Hatra looked at Anthony in confusion. because Harold did something stupid. Long before the banquet, he couldn't wait to give the other round mirror to the cardinal of the kingdom. "What do you think your good father would think?" Anthony reminded calmly. Hatcher paused for a moment, and soon understood what Anthony meant. His father, King Basil, had devoted his life to consolidating the royal power. Harold's act of presenting the round mirror to Cardinal Lozak first undoubtedly provoked the thorn in King Basil's heart again. And those nobles, nominally the controllers of various territories, but in fact, the words of the major bishops were far more effective than their decrees, which made many nobles extremely disgusted, but they dared not speak out. But his brother Harold made sure that in order to win the throne for himself, he was extremely flattering to the cardinal. Anyone could see that if Harold became king, the power of the church would only be greater than before. The nobles who supported him were nothing more than hoping that after he became king, he would be able to limit the privileges of the priests to a certain extent. Thinking of this, Hatcher calmed down again, but still looked a little worried. "Master Anthony, what if the cardinal really supports Harold?" This is also the problem he is most worried about. Although they are born with extraordinary power due to the royal bloodline, even his father King Basil cannot compete with the cardinal. The only one in the whole capital who can really compete with the cardinal is Anthony, the great wizard, but he obviously can't do it easily. Otherwise it will only attract the encirclement of the church. This is the worst-case scenario. Anthony's expression also became a little more solemn. Although there has always been a saying in the church that the spirit and faith belong to God, and the secular and the flesh belong to the king, it is just a polite way to comfort the nobles. "Then what should we do now?" Hatch asked in annoyance. "I heard that the 2 round mirrors and the glass products that have appeared on the market recently are all the work of Viscount William. We may be able to start from here and find out where he got this rare ore from," Anthony said thoughtfully. He was also very interested in this kind of glass products. During the research, he accidentally discovered that these things can enlarge or reduce an object under a specific curved surface structure, and can be used to make many useful alchemical instruments. "Okay, I will send someone to investigate immediately," Hatcher nodded and replied. Although William is only a viscount, he controls a large fleet. He is also a famous wealthy businessman in the kingdom and one of the most staunch supporters of the eldest Prince Harold. If he can be eliminated, Harold will naturally lose an important helper. At the same time, in the dean's office of Yalta College, after listening to the report of the boatman sent by Laud, Lin En tapped the table with his index finger and spoke slowly. "That is to say, William has not been very content recently, and even wants to redistribute the profits." "Yes," William said, "that these novel glass products are easy to arouse the covetousness of others. He needs to spend a lot of thought and energy to deal with the nobles of the church and the kingdom. The benefits we give him are far from enough. He hopes to be able to split them in half." The laborer reported truthfully. Lin En sneered. William was simply asking for too much and had no idea of the situation. Although the other party had to face some additional pressure, the most dangerous shipping work was now completely carried out by them, and William did not need to intervene. All the other party had to do was to use their own power to cover up, bribe their superiors, and give 30% of the benefits, which was already extremely generous. According to the investigation of Lord and others, William perfectly implemented his hunger marketing and product grading system, and sold those glass products at a sky-high price. In just 2 or 3 days, he earned thousands of imperial gold coins, which was enough to catch up with the trade volume of the whole year in the past. However, human greed obviously has no limit. It seems that after learning about Halrim's death, William has become a little arrogant. Let Laud hold him back first and talk slowly. "My bottom line is that we should each give up a layer of interests to appease those priests and nobles." Lin En thought for a while and then made a decision. William is now the Viscount of the Kingdom of Hadjarata, and Laud has just been in the capital for a week. The news has not been ascertained yet. It is difficult to take over all the forces of the other party in a short period of time. It is better to hold back first, and then settle the accounts slowly. What he needs now is various mineral resources and scarce alchemical materials. Pure gold coins are not very meaningful to Lin En. Chapter 222 One of the 4 fundamental forces, electromagnetic force. After thinking for a moment, Lin En looked at the boatman and asked again, "What about the disputes among the royal families? Have you found out anything?" The boatman did not dare to hide anything and told all the news he had found out in the past few days. King Basil's two sons are named Harold and Hatcher. Not long ago, on the king's birthday, Harold presented a life-size glass mirror and finished glassware made by us. He was very popular at the banquet and was warmly welcomed by all the nobles. It is rumored that the prince also gave another round mirror to Cardinal Lozak. Now the whole kingdom is spreading that Harold has the support of the church and will soon be appointed as the crown prince. Although they have not been in the kingdom of Hydrata for a long time, they have established relationships with some nobles by virtue of the convenience of selling glass products. This news is widely circulated in the noble circle and is not a secret, so they inquired about it in great detail. Lin En listened to these royal disputes as if he was listening to gossip. Lin En was very surprised that William chose Harold as his supporter. From the information obtained by Laud and others, it was not a sudden decision by William, but he had been on the side since the dispute over the crown prince. But wasn't the prince on the side of the Holy See? Lin En was stunned for a moment, but after thinking about it carefully, he soon understood. In the past, William was indeed helping him to smuggle supplies. In order to hide his identity, he needed a layer of cover. It was undoubtedly a smart choice to get close to Harold, which not only reduced the possibility of being suspected, but also provided a lot of convenience. Of course, that was before. Now William's restless attitude obviously made this a new hidden danger. In addition, we also heard some news about wizards in the capital. The boatman reported carefully. "Tell me about it." Lin En nodded, not surprised by this. Although wizards have been hunted down and suppressed by the Holy See and the Sekha's empire, there will never be a lack of people who pursue power in this world. Some wizards with great talents can even release some of the most basic spells without learning. So no matter how the church encircles and suppresses them, the group of wizards will always exist, and at most they will hide more secretly. Just last month, the church searched for 3 wizards in the capital. The aftermath of the battle between the two sides destroyed several houses. There are also rumors that these wizards seem to be able to use the power of lightning. The boatman said everything he knew. "Oh, are you sure?" Lin En immediately became interested. After using real mirror to replicate the electromagnetic cannon, Lin En was very interested in using lightning magic and made many attempts. After all, electromagnetic force is one of the 4 basic forces existing in everything, and contains extremely terrifying power. However, with his current perception ability, he can't detect the existence of electric charge at all, let alone control the electric current. Originally, Lin En thought that his ability was not enough, and perhaps only the great wizard who could decompose and create metal elements was qualified to contact this field. Now it seems that this is not the case. There are wizards in the kingdom who can summon lightning. This undoubtedly overturned his previous conclusion. Lin En didn't believe that the captured wizard was a great wizard. Otherwise, in the battle, not to mention a few houses, I'm afraid that half of the capital would be destroyed. Under Lin En's inquiry, the boatman hesitated and dared not answer, because these news were all obtained by them, and no one had seen the appearance of those wizards using lightning magic. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, Lin En didn't mean to embarrass the other party. He waved his hand and let the boatman retreat. Then his expression suddenly froze, but it was the ring he left for Laud that was activated. 3 minutes ago, in a remote street in the kingdom of Hydrata, Laud, who had been disguised, was leaning on a cane and limping into a long and narrow alley. From time to time, his eyes glanced at the round mirror buckled in his palm, using the mirror to observe the scene behind. He had been followed for 2 days, but Laud had no way of confirming who was following him. It might be someone from the church, or it might be William's trick. Laud knew that this was not a solution. Tomorrow was the day to transport the ore back to Hydrata. To ensure that everything was safe, he had to get rid of this little tail first. Thinking of this, Laud's face became more sinister. He had explored this area in advance, and generally no one would come, but he had to make a quick decision, so as not to attract the city guards. As he was thinking, a high wall was already in front of him. It was obviously a dead end. Laud immediately took off his disguise. His leg was no longer lame, and he didn't lean on the crutches in his hand. While the other party hadn't reacted yet, He took a big step and ran, then jumped high, grabbed the bulge of the high wall with both hands, and flipped over directly. The whole set of movements was extremely perfect. Even a person with healthy hands and feet might not be able to do such a beautiful climbing movement. The wizard Abel, who followed Loud, was stunned. He had no time to cast a spell and watched the lame man disappear in front of him. "Damn, this is a trap." Abel reacted in the second. His face changed suddenly. It was obvious that the other party's lame appearance was deliberately disguised to lure him into this alley. However, when he realized this, a warning sign had already appeared in his heart. Then the solid earth wall beside him had exploded. Abel only had time to turn his head and saw a ferocious beast claw waving at him. Made shield. Almost subconsciously, a magic barrier appeared around Abel, and then the whole person was slapped away, and his body rolled several times and hit the wall behind him. Fortunately, the made shield resisted most of the damage, and fine cracks appeared on the magic barrier. Before Abel had time to breathe a sigh of relief, he saw a half-lion, half-human monster running towards him. A demon beast, or a shaping lizard? No, it could also be a blood knight. Abel didn't have time to think too much. He supported himself with his hands and activated the second level spell, Spike Barrier. A steady stream of magic power was injected into the flat surface. At the moment when the half-lion, half-human monster rushed to 2 meters in front of him, Abel's eyes focused, and extremely sharp spikes instantly rose from the ground and pierced through its body. Chapter 223 Anthony's Lightning Storm. Roar. The half-lion, half-human monster couldn't stop its charge at all, and its body was pierced by several sharp spikes. A sharp roar soon sounded in the narrow alley. Abel raised his hand and used a magic shock to knock the monster away. Then a hot fireball ignited in his palm, and he was about to make a final blow. Bang! At this moment, a sharp roar suddenly sounded. A lead bullet was fired later but arrived first, directly penetrating the made shield that had just been hit hard, and flew past Abel's head by a hair's breadth. Abel was immediately frightened and stepped back repeatedly, interrupting the explosion fire that was ready to be launched, and cast a few more protective magics on himself, and then turned his head to look at the direction where the lead bullet came from. The person who shot was Loud, and at this moment he was holding that strange cane in his hand. In fact, this was not a cane, but a specially modified musket. It was a gift from the second batch of wizards who came to support him a few days ago. It was said to be a new product of the alchemy workshop. It had no magic fluctuations and could ignore the inspection of the church. It was specially given to him for self-defense. But the disadvantage was also obvious. Although it had great power, it could only fire 1 round of ammunition in a short period of time. The wizard in front of him would naturally not give him a chance to reload. Loud could only bite the bullet and comfort him. "This wizard, please calm down. I think there must be some misunderstanding." In fact, when Loud found out that the person following him was a wizard, he realized that something was wrong, because in theory, all wizards are enemies of the church, and they have common interests. Misunderstanding? Abel, who had narrowly escaped death twice, was very annoyed. He sneered and looked at the strange-looking divine instrument in Loud's hand with fear. He was worried that the other party would take out something strange. He immediately decided not to hold back and subdue these people first before slowly interrogating them. Abel raised his index finger and pointed at Loud, and blue lightning immediately condensed at his fingertips. Chain lightning. Loud's pupils shrank. He didn't expect that the legend was true. The wizard of the kingdom of Hadra really had the power to control thunder. As early as the moment he confronted Abel, Loud had already tightly grasped the ring that Lin En gave him in his hand, and shouted in fear in his mind, "Lord Lin En, save me!" The blue lightning was so fast that it was unimaginable. It arrived in front of him at the moment Abel cast the magic water curtain wall. A familiar voice sounded in Loud's ears, and then the transparent water curtain stood horizontally in front of him, colliding with the blue lightning. The thin water curtain was instantly electrolyzed and reduced to hydrogen and oxygen. The speed of lightning is extremely fast. It can reach tens or even hundreds of kilometers per second in the air medium. Once it is launched, there is almost no possibility of avoidance. But Abel's casting speed is limited. Lin En, who completed the magic projection in time, still easily protected it. Loud sat down on the ground, his whole body filled with joy after surviving the disaster. He didn't expect that Lord Lin En not only heard his inner cry, but also came in person. This also means that he is finally safe. Wizard? Traitor? Abel's expression suddenly became very ugly. He didn't expect that there would be a wizard involved in tracking down William's men. Could it be that some cowardly traitor who was willing to become a knife of the church in order to survive and in turn harm his colleagues? After blocking the chain lightning, Lin En did not launch another attack. Although he could not spare too much energy to monitor Loud just now, he was not completely ignorant. After scanning the situation on the field, he had some guesses in his mind. I think we can have a good talk, Mr. Wizard, Lin En said very kindly, and then paused, and then turned to add, but we need to change their place. The gunshots just now will probably attract the city guards soon. Abel didn't believe a word of it. He saw Loud selling those glass products with his own eyes. Everyone in the whole kingdom of Hadrada knew that William was on the side of the great Prince Harold and would definitely be a lackey of the church. What's more, the other party was just a former wizard and was not worthy of his fear. Summoning giant stone golem, Abel's mind moved, and the spell slot in his mind suddenly lit up. The collapsed earth wall fragments beside him quickly piled up and turned into a stone golem more than 2 meters high, rushing towards Lin En and others. Lin En shook his head. He knew that if he didn't knock the other party down, he probably couldn't talk properly, so he looked at Loud. Get away from me, but not too far. Loud nodded quickly, and rolled and crawled under a collapsed earth wall, secretly observing the battle outside. He was very confident in Lin En, but the opponent's lightning magic was too weird. In just a moment, the stone puppet had rushed to the front, raised the stone hammer and smashed towards Lin En. Lin En did not launch a counterattack, but jumped high to avoid it. But at this moment, Abel's magic was ready to go. 3-ring magic, Anthony's lightning storm. The terrifying electric current condensed in Abel's palm. Along with the chanting of the spell, the lightning shot out, like a dense spider web, constantly leaping in the air, and instantly wrapped up Lin En and the stone puppet. The violent arc of electricity continued to devour everything around, making a series of crackling and crisp sounds. Lin En, who was in midair, seemed to have no time to dodge and was submerged in the lightning. The blue lightning drilled into Lin En's body like a venomous snake, destroying his body wantonly. A smile appeared at the corner of Abel's mouth. In front of the power of thunder, all resistance was meaningless. Master Lin En, Loud couldn't help but exclaimed, his face full of horror and fear. However, the next moment, the smile on Abel's face froze, because Lin En, who was hit, was still safe and sound under the violent arc of electricity, suspended in the air, without any impact. How is this possible? Abel shouted in disbelief. No matter how powerful the magic is, if you don't find the real target, it's just a waste of effort. Lin En's voice rang again, but it came from another direction. Lin En's magic incarnation had already moved with Loud, and it was just a false illusion that he was standing there just now. It must be said that the visual magic created by Aurora is simply a masterpiece for pretending to be ghosts. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Get out of my way, you monster. Damn, what kind of magic is this? Abel had no experience dealing with visual magic before. Seeing that the strongest magic he mastered was useless, he immediately panicked and used multiple pyroblast, but the target was not Lin En, but the alleys on both sides. A violent explosion sounded, and the earth wall, which was not strong to begin with, collapsed in an instant, burying the road. Then, under the cover of smoke and dust, Abel fled without looking back. Lin En's face remained unchanged, and the index finger of his right hand trembled lightly, and a strange wave of magic spread out in a circle. The running Abel had reached the end of the alley, and there was hope of life ahead. Just when Abel was about to step out of the alley, his heart suddenly shook violently, and the whole person kept the momentum of rushing forward and fell to the ground. rolling on the ground in embarrassment for several times. Abel's face was full of horror. The magic mirror and the violent vibration of his heart were all magic he had never seen before. They were so strange that it was hard to imagine. Could it be that the person who attacked him was a believer of some evil god? Before Abel could figure it out, a dark red figure had already pounced on him. On its lion-like head were a pair of red eyes. The wounds on its body had healed, but the remaining pain still made it wave its claws wildly, hitting the magic protection on Abel's body again and again. "Get out of my way, you monster! Get out of my way!" Seeing the sharp claws that were bigger than his head only 1 centimeter away from him, Abel was scared to death and shouted wildly. At the same time, dense arcs of electricity emerged from his body and soon spread to the half-lion, half-human monster on his body. This was the second ring magic, lightning barrier. However, the half-lion, half-human monster was enduring the pain and numbness of being electrocuted, with red flames all over his body, and smashed the protective barrier with his sandbag-sized fist. "Owen, save some strength. Don't kill him." A voice suddenly came from a distance. The monster that was about to give Abel the final blow paused immediately, then retracted its claws and knocked Abel unconscious with one punch. Lin En, who came over, saw Abel who had fainted. The wizard's face still had a look of fear and uncertainty, and he was obviously scared. The half-lion, half-human monster began to deform rapidly. After just a few seconds, a 15 or 16-year-old boy appeared in the alley. His face was pale, his short hair stood up due to the electricity, and his hands and feet were trembling slightly, but he still spoke in a trembling voice. "Master Lin En, how is it? Are you okay?" Lin En asked with concern. "If you resist the electric shock head-on, even if your physical fitness after the transformation is good, it will inevitably be affected. It's okay, just a little numb." The boy couldn't help but shiver. His muscles were very sore and every hair stood up. It was the first time for him to experience the feeling of being struck by lightning. "You'd better not be so reckless next time." Lin En shook his head helplessly, and then asked again, "Where are the Mage Shield and Pyroblast that I asked you to learn?" "Those two magics are too complicated," the half-grown boy said embarrassedly. "No matter how complicated it is, you have to learn it. You have to know a few magics. Otherwise, if you meet a stronger wizard or bishop, you can only be beaten by magic transformation. It's too disadvantageous." Lin En reminded him. The boy in front of him, named Owen, was the number 22 experiment subject he had seen in Lodic's laboratory a few months ago. He was the lucky one who had merged two magic beast bloodlines in succession. Because Lodic's manor was located in the outer area of the South City district, it was not included in the soul-devouring formation that exploded. After the tragedy in the South City district, all these magic experiment subjects were rescued by the search and rescue team. Owen was one of them. After more than a month of treatment, he has basically recovered. These transformed magicians were quite powerful and could compete with some former wizards. Naturally, Lin En had no intention of leaving them alone. He used psychic magic to treat the mentally unstable ones, and incorporated them into the newly established security team for those who were mentally stable. It was a farewell to the past and a proper job. Owen, who had the strongest ability, was sent by Lin En to protect Loud and others. After all, his age was a good cover. Not many people would have thought that a teenager of 15 or 16 could burst out with such terrifying power. The only flaw was that these magicians, although they had huge magic power, seemed to have difficulty in condensing spells, and their resistance to mental magic was not strong. After comforting the boy, Lin En turned his attention to Loud, who had just crawled out from under the earth wall. "Lord Lin En, this action was my negligence, which almost caused serious consequences. Please punish me." Loud wiped the cold sweat from his head and said in annoyance. Previously, he thought that with Owen's help and his own hidden shooting, it would be more than enough to deal with a little tail following him, and there was no need to make a big scene. Who would have thought that the wizard following him would be a wizard of a high level? If Lin En had not arrived in time this time, they would probably be in danger. "Take the person away, we'll talk about it in a safe place," Lin En said without comment. After a touch of fire cleaned up the traces left by the battle, The whole person disappeared in front of the two. Lord Lin En, Loud looked around and shouted, but no one answered. What the hell? Logically speaking, shouldn't that lord still be in Yata? Loud muttered to himself, with more awe in his heart. The young man on the side picked up Abel and urged Loud to run away together. Just 1 minute after the two left, a team of priests in white robes with sacred emblems on their chests arrived at the scene. There are traces of fire magic on the ground. It must be a former wizard who has such a powerful destructive power. The leading archbishop looked at the collapsed earth wall and the dark ground and said, "We are a step too late. It seems that the other party has escaped. I hope no innocent people are injured." These damn devil believers. Several priests were either sympathetic or angry. These damn wizards were like rats, always hiding in cracks and corners that they could not find, and jumping out from time to time to cause trouble. Report what happened here to Lord Lozak. Recently, these wizards seem to be more and more active, the leading archbishop said worriedly. Chapter 225 We come from Green Ridge, the land of wizards. Darkness, hunger, pain. Under the dazzling sunlight, Abel woke up drowsily, and then he felt a pain on his right cheek. I don't know if it was a deliberate revenge, but Owen's last punch was very heavy, causing his entire right face to swell up. But Abel no longer had the mind to think about this, because he soon found that his hands were bound by a strange shackle, and what frightened him even more was that the magic power in his body was also suppressed. These are shackles made of magic-repelling stones, which can suppress the wizard's ability to cast spells. A voice soon rang in the house. Abel immediately turned his head and looked over. The strange, devil-like figure was standing not far away. In addition, there was the middle-aged man who shamelessly disguised himself as a cripple and deceived him, and a half-grown boy. It's over. Abel's face was pale. How could he not understand that he was caught by someone? He couldn't help but recall those horrible criminal laws in his mind. He had heard that every wizard captured by the church would face extremely cruel torture, regardless of whether he disclosed the information or not. The final result would be being sent to the stake and burned into charcoal. Thinking of this, Abel gritted his teeth, put his hands on his legs freely, and pressed lightly with his index and middle fingers as if he was looking for something. Don't look for it. I've already taken it out for you, lest you get upset. Lin En stretched out his right hand, and a finger-length ironwood stick appeared in his palm, with fine runes on the stick. This thing was hidden very secretly, and was buckled in the interlayer of the rope. It should be used for suicide or death with the enemy under special circumstances. Seeing that his last support appeared in Lin En's hand, Abel's face suddenly turned pale, and the whole person seemed to have lost his bones and leaned against the white wall behind him. Don't worry. We don't have any bad intentions, Lin En said slowly. Don't waste your thoughts. I won't tell you anything. Abel interrupted with a sneer. Abel's bad attitude made Lin En speechless, but he also knew that he had just beaten someone up, and the other party was probably still angry. After thinking for a while, he spoke. In fact, we are from Greenreel, the land of wizards. Greenreel? Abel paused for a moment. He had naturally heard of this legendary wizard holy land. It is said that it is a paradise for wizards. There is no power from the church and no witch hunters. Everyone can study witchcraft freely and expound their own magic theories. Abel has always sneered at this rumor. He does not think that such a place exists. The real wizard Holy Land will only be created by the great master Anthony himself, a real country belonging to wizards. Since you say you are from the land of wizards, where is the evidence? Abel said with a sneer. Everyone in the kingdom of Hadra that knows that William is a supporter of the Grand Prince and a lackey of the church. Aren't you working for William just to beg for forgiveness from the church, hoping that the cardinal will be kind enough to spare your lives? I can tell you that this is impossible. The day you lose your usefulness, you will be tied to the stake and burned to death. Abel said mockingly. You probably got one thing wrong. To be precise, William is working for me. Before, he approached Harold just as a cover for his identity. Lin En explained slowly and was a little surprised. Judging from Abel's attitude, it seems that he doesn't know much about the land of wizards. You know, William has been in the kingdom of Hadra for more than 10 years, and he has never had any contact with local wizards. Could it be that when Helram asked him to work for him, he did something bad, causing William to always hate wizards. Lin En suddenly realized that although Helram left him some inheritance, there were more pitfalls. "Of course I can give you evidence, but you need to tell me which school you are from and who is the leader," Lin En continued. "In addition, I have also studied electromagnetism. Maybe we can exchange relevant experiences when we have the chance." "So you want to spy on the secret of thunder magic?" Abel immediately became alert as if he had guessed Lin En's thoughts. Thunder magic was gradually discovered by Master Anthony at the risk of his life and after hundreds of lightning strikes. It is also the treasure of the entire school. Abel would never allow such an important secret to be revealed from him. He immediately put on an expression of dying rather than surrendering, so as not to be tricked. He did not say a word afterwards, and remained silent no matter how Lin En asked. Seeing Abel's refusal to cooperate, Owen rolled up his sleeves and was about to hit him a few times, ready to wake Abel up, but was stopped by Lin En's hand. "Since you have doubts about us, stay here for a while. I believe you will change your mind soon." Lin did not give a long explanation, but generously gave Abel some time to think slowly. The other wizard's level was not low. He was also a 3-ring wizard. Lin did not have the ability to use psychic magic to break Abel's mental defense and obtain his memory. Torture did not seem to be a good idea. He did not want to push a group of potential allies to the opposite side, especially now that William's attitude was uncertain. These wizards who had been rooted in the kingdom of Hadra for a long time were even more worthy of being won over. It was not difficult to kill William, but the difficult part was how to deal with the subsequent affairs and avoid attracting the attention of the church. Lin gave a few instructions and asked Owen to take care of Abel, then to cloud out. A few minutes later, he asked the servants to bring some food and put it on the table. After following Loud for several days and having just experienced a hard battle, Abel was already tired and hungry. The white bread, sausages, steaks and grilled fish on the table were like the devil's temptation, constantly attracting his attention. Abel swallowed his saliva, but soon thought that there must be some kind of hallucinogenic substance placed in it, tempting him to eat it so that he could reveal some important information. "Don't you want to eat it?" Owen asked curiously. Abel, who had long seen through everything, shook his head firmly, indicating that he would never touch it. Owen ignored Abel, picked up a piece of fragrant steak, put it in his mouth and took a big bite, and soon swept away all the delicacies on the table, leaving no intention of leaving any for Abel. Could it be that there is really no problem with these foods? Seeing Owen eating happily, Abel couldn't help swallowing his saliva, and fell into a game of reason and hunger. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.